Tara's tongue darts out, desperate to taste Keith's skin. The young Ocampa female lunges across the International Space Station's laboratory, her eyes wild with an unnatural hunger. Keith Burns, lead human scientist, barely dodges her advance, his heart pounding as he realizes the gravity of the situation. Containment breach in Lab 3. Keith shouts into his comm unit, backing away from the approaching alien. Tara's reacting to the antibiotic. She's trying to lick me. The words hang in the air, absurd yet terrifying. On Earth, political leaders watch the live feed in horror. The crucial peace negotiations with the technologically advanced Ocampa race hang by a thread. Humanity's best hope against the looming Xindi invasion crumbling before their eyes. Tara corners Keith against a bank of sensitive equipment. Her breath comes in short gasps, sweat beading on her forehead. The common Earth antibiotic, administered for a minor infection, has triggered an overwhelming physiological response. Keith's mind races, analyzing possible causes even as he searches for an escape route. "Tara, you need to fight this," he says, trying to keep his voice calm. "It's just a side effect. We can fix it." But Tara's only response is a low growl. She lunges again, her tongue extended. Keith ducks. Feeling the air displacement, as she misses by millimeters, he sprints for the lab door, slamming his hand on the emergency lockdown panel. The reinforced barrier slams shut, trapping Tara inside. Alarms blare throughout the station. The other Ocampa diplomats, outraged, demand immediate action. Their accusations of intentional sabotage echo through the communications channels. Earth's leaders, panicked by the potential fallout, issue an ultimatum to Keith: solve this crisis in 24 hours or watch the Alliance crumble. As Keith rushes to his research station, reports flood in from across the ISS. Other male crew members barricade themselves in their quarters, Tara's desperate attempts to reach them causing chaos. The station's AI, detecting her elevated vitals, initiates emergency protocols, further complicating Keith's efforts to find a cure. Analyzing Tara's biochemistry, Keith makes a startling discovery. The antibiotic has interacted with an unknown gland in Ocampa physiology, creating a powerful pheromone response. This gland could be the key to understanding Ocampa mating behaviors, and potentially a biological weapon. News of the incident leaks to Earth. Protests erupt outside government buildings. Some demand an immediate end to all alien relations, while others call for full disclosure of extraterrestrial medical data. The pressure mounts as Keith races against time. With options dwindling, Keith faces an impossible choice. To synthesize an antidote, he may need to allow Tara to lick him, obtaining a sample of the active compound in her saliva. But the unknown properties of Ocampa biochemistry make this a potentially fatal or irreversibly altering decision. As the clock ticks down, Keith stares through the lab's observation window at Tara. She presses against the glass, her eyes pleading and desperate. He takes a deep breath, weighing the fate of humanity's crucial alliance against his own safety. With trembling fingers, he reaches for the door release, knowing his next action could change everything. Keith's hand hovered over the door release, his heart pounding in his chest. With a deep breath, he pressed a button, sealing his fate. The lab door slid open with a hiss. Tara's eyes locked onto Keith, her body tense like a predator ready to pounce. He raised his hands in a calming gesture, speaking softly. "Tara, I'm here to help. We need to get a sample of your saliva to create an antidote. Do you understand?" Tara nodded, her eyes wild but somehow lucid. Keith slowly extended his arm, positioning it over a sterile collection tray. "I need you to lick my arm. Can you do that?" Without hesitation, Tara lunged forward. Her tongue, hot and rough, dragged across Keith's forearm. He winced, fighting the urge to pull away as she licked him again and again. the collection tray filled with her saliva mixed with microscopic particles of his skin. Suddenly, a jolt of electricity seemed to course through Keith's body. His vision blurred, then sharpened with startling clarity. Every sound in the lab became crisp and distinct. He gasped, overwhelmed by the rush of sensations. "Keith, what's happening?" Tara's voice cut through the cacophony of sensory input. Her compulsion to lick had vanished, replaced by concern and fascination. Keith looked down at his arm, his eyes widening in shock. A faint blue glow emanated from his skin, spreading rapidly across his body. I don't know," he stammered, watching the luminescence creep up his neck. The station's AI chimed in, its voice tinged with urgency. "Anomalous energy signature detected. Initiating quarantine protocols." Heavy blast doors slammed shut, sealing Keith and Tara in the lab. Alarms blared throughout the station, but to Keith, they sounded distant and muffled. His focus narrowed to Tara, who stood before him, her earlier frenzy completely gone. "You're sent," she murmured, stepping closer. "It's different. Calming." Keith noticed a change in Tara as well. Her eyes, once clouded with primal hunger, now shone with heightened intelligence. She moved with newfound grace, her movements precise and controlled. "We need to study this," Keith said, his scientific mind kicking into overdrive. He grabbed a handheld scanner, running it over his glowing skin and then Tara's body. The readings were off the charts, showing unprecedented levels of neural activity in both of them. As they worked, a notification flashed on the lab's main screen. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command," the AI announced. The screen flickered to life, revealing the stern face of General Hammond. "Burns, we're sending in a specialist. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, top xenobiologist. She'll be there in 3 hours. What's your status?" Keith explained the situation, watching the general's expression shift from concern to guarded interest. As the call ended, Keith turned back to Tara, noticing she was staring at him intently. "Keith," she said, her voice filled with wonder, "I can understand you perfectly now. Not just your words, but everything." He blinked, realizing he could do the same. The complex clicks and trills of the Ocampa language flowed through his mind as easily as English. "This is incredible," he breathed, the implications of their newfound connection dawning on him. Over the next few hours, Keith and Tara worked feverishly, documenting every aspect of their transformation. They discovered that proximity intensified their connection, allowing them to share not just language, but thoughts and emotions. When Dr. Rodriguez arrived, she found them huddled over a holographic display, conversing rapidly in a mix of English and Ocampa. The xenobiologist's eyes widened as she took in Keith's glowing form and Tara's transformed demeanor. "Dr. Burns, Tara," she said, stepping into the lab. "I'm Dr. Rodriguez. Let's see what we're dealing with here." As they briefed her on the situation, alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The AI's voice crackled over the intercom, its tone urgent. "Alert! Unidentified vessel detected on approach vector. Stealth technology detected. Possible hostile intent." Keith and Tara exchanged a look of alarm. Through their newfound connection, they both sensed the gravity of the situation. The Xeni had arrived, and with them, a threat that could unravel everything they had discovered. Dr. Rodriguez's face hardened with perseverance. "We need to accelerate our research," she said, her eyes darting between Keith and Tara. "What we've stumbled upon here could be our only hope against what's coming." As the station's defenses activated and the crew scrambled to battle stations, Keith felt a surge of drive. Whatever the Xeni had planned, he and Tara now stood at the forefront of humanity's defense. Their unprecedented bond, born of an accident, had become the linchpin in an interstellar conflict. The lab hummed with activity as they raced against time, the looming Xeni threat casting a shadow over their groundbreaking discoveries. Keith's skin pulsed with blue light, a beacon of hope in the face of impending chaos. The blue glow pulsing from Keith's skin cast an eerie light across the lab as he and Tara worked alongside Dr. Rodriguez. Their newfound connection hummed between them, a silent understanding that transcended language. Suddenly, the station's AI cut through their concentration. Alert! Unidentified vessel detected on approach vector. Stealth technology detected. Possible hostile intent. Keith's heart raced as he exchanged a knowing glance with Tara. The Xeni had arrived. Before they could react, Colonel Marcus Steele's voice boomed over the intercom. Red alert! All non-essential personnel evacuate to the secure bunker immediately. This is not a drill. The lab erupted into a flurry of activity. Dr. Rodriguez hurriedly gathered her equipment, her hands shaking as she prepared for the controversial experiment she proposed, merging Keith and Tara's genetic material. We don't have much time, she said, her voice tight with urgency. This could be our best chance against the Xeni. Keith stepped forward, his skin shimmering. Colonel Steele, Tara and I can help. Our connection, it's given us unique abilities. Granted. Steele's reply crackled through the comm. Report to the command center immediately. As they raced through the station's corridors, Keith felt a surge of energy coursing through him. He glanced at Tara, seeing his own persistence mirrored in her eyes. In the command center, screens flickered with data streams and tactical displays. Colonel Steele stood at the center, his face grim as he surveyed the approaching threat. Burns, I need you on weapon systems, Steele barked. Tara, assist with shield calibration. Keith's fingers flew across the control panel, his enhanced cognition processing the tactical data at an astonishing rate. He felt Tara's presence in his mind, their shared understanding allowing them to work in perfect synchronization. Sir, Keith called out, I think I can integrate some Ocampa defensive technology into our systems. It could give us an edge. Steele nodded sharply. Do it. As Keith worked, the station shuddered under a barrage of Xeni energy weapons. The enhanced shields held, but alarms blared throughout the structure. Direct hit to Lab 3, an ensign reported. Power surge detected. Keith's blood ran cold. Dr. Rodriguez. Back in the lab, chaos reigned. The power surge had damaged critical systems, compromising the containment field around Dr. Rodriguez's experimental setup. As she scrambled to salvage her work, a vial of mixed human and Ocampa DNA toppled from its stand. The viscous liquid splashed onto the fur of a nearby lab rat. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the creature began to convulse. Dr. Rodriguez watched in horror as the rat grew, its form twisting and reshaping. Bones cracked and reformed, fur receded and regrew in patches. Within minutes, the creature had tripled in size, its eyes glowing with an unnatural intelligence. With a swipe of its newly elongated limbs, the mutant rat shattered its cage and lumbered towards the lab exit. Security to Lab 3. Dr. Rodriguez shouted into her comm unit. We have a containment breach. In the command center, Keith's enhanced senses picked up the commotion. He turned to Tara, their shared awareness allowing him to convey the situation without words. Go, he said simply. I'll handle things here. Tara nodded, sprinting from the room. As she raced through the station, her Ocampa agility enhanced by her transformation, she could sense the mutant creature's presence, a roiling mass of confused instincts and raw power. She cornered it in the hydroponics bay, lush vegetation providing cover for the beast. As Tara crouched, ready to subdue the creature, she noticed something strange. The rat was still changing, its form becoming more humanoid with each passing second. Meanwhile, Keith's fingers danced across the weapon's console. His heightened abilities allowed him to anticipate the Xeni ship's movements, landing several direct hits on their main engines. "We've disabled their propulsion," he reported to Colonel Steele. "But they're launching boarding pods." Steele's face hardened. "Prepare for hand-to-hand combat. All security teams to breach points." As the station braced for boarders, a priority transmission from Earth flashed across the main screen. Keith's enhanced vision allowed him to read the message before Steele could even open it. The Global Defense Council had authorized the use of an experimental weapon, a targeted electromagnetic pulse designed to disable Xeni technology. But using it could fry every system on the station, potentially killing everyone aboard. Keith watched as Steele's face paled, the weight of the decision heavy on his shoulders. The colonel's hand hovered over the command to authorize the weapon's use, trembling slightly. In the hydroponics bay, Terra circled the mutant creature, which now stood on two legs, its features a bizarre blend of human, Ocampa, and rat. Its eyes locked onto her, filled with a desperate intelligence. As alarms blared and the station rocked from renewed Xeni assault, Keith, Terra, and the crew found themselves trapped between impossible choices. The invading Xenti, the rapidly evolving experiment, and the looming threat of their own government's desperate measures converged into a perfect storm of chaos. Keith's skin pulsed with blue light as he turned back to the weapon's console, knowing that the next few moments would shape not just their fate, but the future of human-alien relations and Earth's very survival. Survival. As the gravity of the situation sank in, Colonel Steele's hand moved decisively towards the console. "This is Colonel Steele. All personnel, proceed immediately to EMP-shielded areas. This is not a drill. We have less than 5 minutes. Move." The station erupted into controlled chaos as crew members rushed to secure themselves. Keith's enhanced mind raced, processing the implications of the impending pulse. He grabbed Terra's arm, his skin pulsing with an intense blue glow. "We need to modify a section for us now," he said, his voice tight with urgency. Terra nodded, understanding flowing between them without words. They sprinted through the corridors, Keith's heightened senses guiding them to a small storage bay. His fingers flew across the control panel, rerouting power and reconfiguring the room's shielding. "This should protect us," he said, sealing the door behind them. Meanwhile, in the hydroponics bay, Terra faced off against the mutant rat creature. It lunged at her, its newly elongated limbs giving it unexpected reach. Terra ducked, her Ocampa agility enhanced by her transformation. She feinted left, then spun right, using the creature's momentum against it. With a swift movement, she activated a stasis pod and maneuvered the creature inside. As the pod hummed to life, freezing the mutant in suspended animation, Terra heard the evacuation order. Her eyes widened as she realized the importance of preserving this unprecedented hybrid. Without hesitation, she began modifying the pod's shielding, her fingers moving with preternatural speed. Across the station, Dr. Rodriguez sealed herself in her shielded lab, surrounded by her precious research materials. Colonel Steele and his security team secured themselves in the command center's protected core. As the final seconds ticked down, an eerie silence fell over the station. Then, with a blinding flash, the electromagnetic pulse erupted. The effect was instantaneous. The Xeni ships outside the station went dark, their occupants suddenly finding themselves in freefall. Inside the station, every unshielded system sparked and died. In their makeshift shelter, Keith and Terra felt the pulse wash over them. Their skin tingled, and for a moment, the world seemed to blur. As the sensation faded, they looked at each other in shock. "Can you hear me?" Terra's voice echoed in Keith's mind, her lips unmoving. "Yes," he replied silently, the telepathic connection between them now crystal clear. As emergency power flickered on, casting the station in a dim red glow, they emerged from their shelter. The air already felt thinner, life support systems struggling to function. "We need to restore critical systems," Keith said, his enhanced mind already mapping out priorities. They moved through the station with uncanny coordination, their intensified bond allowing them to work as one. Keith's hands flew across control panels, while Tara rerouted power conduits, their efforts synchronizing perfectly. In the lab, Dr. Rodriguez stared in amazement at her genetic samples. The EMP had triggered an unexpected reaction, the hybrid DNA strand stabilizing before her eyes. Meanwhile, Colonel Steele led his team through the airlock. They found the Xindi invaders floating helplessly, their advanced technology rendered useless. With practiced efficiency, they secured the alien soldiers, including a large, scarred individual that Steele identified as Commander G.R. Rail. As the immediate threat subsided, Keith's enhanced senses picked up a subtle vibration. His eyes widened as he realized the implication. "Colonel," he called over the comm, "the station's orbit is decaying. We have less than 48 hours before structural integrity fails." Steele's face hardened. "Options, Burns?" Before Keith could respond, Tara stepped forward. "I might have a solution," she said, her voice steady despite the risk. "We can use Ocampa gravity manipulation technology. I can interface with it directly." Keith felt a surge of concern through their bond. "Tara, the wrist dash." She cut him off with a look. "We don't have a choice." As they debated the plan, a transmission from Earth cut through the station's comm system. The Defense Council's orders were clear: interrogate the Xindi and prepare for a counterattack. The weight of their situation pressed down on Keith and Tara. They shared a silent look, understanding the monumental task ahead of them. Suddenly, an alert flashed on a nearby console. Keith rushed over, his enhanced vision scanning the readout. "The mutant in hydroponics," he said, his voice tight. "Its brain structure is changing rapidly. We might be dealing with more than just a physical mutation." Tara moved to his side, her mind already racing with possibilities. "If it's developing advanced cognition..." Their words trailed off as they contemplated this new complication. The station hummed around them, its systems barely holding together. Outside, the disabled Xindi ships drifted silently, a reminder of the broader conflict they now found themselves in. As Keith and Tara turned back to their work, the enormity of their task loomed before them. With time running out, they knew that every decision, every action in the coming hours would be critical. The fate of the station, its crew, and perhaps even Earth itself hung in the balance. Balance. Keith and Tara exchanged a determined look, their minds already formulating a plan. "We need to stabilize the station's orbit," Keith said, his enhanced mind rapidly calculating possibilities. "Tara, your Ocampa abilities might be our best shot." Tara nodded, her eyes gleaming with newfound purpose. "I can use gravity manipulation technology, but I'll need your help to interface with it." They quickly set to work, assembling a makeshift control system that merged Ocampa and human technology. Dr. Rodriguez assisted, her expertise proving invaluable as they jury-rigged the complex apparatus. As the final connections were made, Tara took a deep breath and placed her hands on the interface. The moment she made contact, her body began to glow with an ethereal blue light, reminiscent of Keith's earlier transformation. The station shuddered as invisible forces took hold, gradually pushing it back towards a stable orbit. Tara's face contorted with effort, sweat beading on her brow as she struggled to maintain control over the powerful Ocampa technology. Keith felt a surge of concern through their telepathic bond. Without hesitation, he placed his hand on the interface beside Tara's. The effect was immediate and intense. Their minds merged in a kaleidoscope of sensation and thought. Keith's transformed physiology synchronized with the system, amplifying their combined abilities. Together, they guided the station with precision, their shared consciousness allowing for perfect coordination. As the orbital correction neared completion, the strain on their bodies intensified. Tara's legs buckled, and Keith felt as if his skin was on fire. With a final push of willpower, they locked the station into its proper orbit. The interface powered down, and Keith and Tara collapsed to the floor, their bodies intertwined and still glowing faintly. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to their side, her medical scanner whirring as she assessed their condition. "Incredible," she muttered, her eyes wide as she studied the readouts. "The intense connection has accelerated their transformation. They're closer to a true human-Ocampa hybrid state now." As Keith and Tara slowly regained consciousness, they became aware of a deeper, more profound connection between them. Thoughts and emotions flowed freely, their individual identities blurring at the edges. In another part of the station, Colonel Steele stood before a heavily secured holding cell. Inside, Commander Jarrail of the Xeni forces sat motionless, his feline features set in a mask of defiance. "I'll ask you again," Steele said, his voice cold and controlled. "What are your forces planning? Why did you attack the station?" Jarrail's whiskers twitched in what might have been amusement. "Your primitive interrogation techniques are useless against me, human. I will reveal nothing." Steele's heart made as he considered his options. The thought of using Keith and Tara's enhanced abilities to extract information directly from the Xeni's mind crossed his mind, but he hesitated, aware of the ethical implications. Meanwhile, in the secure laboratory, Dr. Rodriguez observed the mutant rat creature with growing fascination. Its brain structure had evolved rapidly, displaying characteristics of human, Ocampa, and Xeni neural patterns. As she studied the readings, a thought struck her. "This creature," she murmured to herself, "it might be the key to understanding the compatibility between our species. Perhaps even a way to bridge the gap and prevent further conflict." The creature's eyes, now larger and more intelligent, seemed to focus on her with an unsettling awareness. A priority transmission from Earth interrupted the tense atmosphere on the station. Colonel Steele's face hardened as he listened to the orders from the Global Defense Council. "Understood," he said tersely. "We'll prepare Burns and Tara for immediate transport." As he ended the transmission, Dr. Rodriguez approached him, her expression troubled. "Colonel, I've just received a communication from the Ocampa High Council. They're demanding asylum for Keith and Tara on their homeworld. They fear Earth's intentions to militarize their biological heritage." Steele's brow furrowed as he processed this new complication. The decision he faced could have far-reaching consequences for Earth's relationships with both the Ocampa and the Xenti. In the medical bay, Keith and Tara sat up slowly, their bodies still adjusting to the latest changes. They sensed the growing tension on the station, their enhanced perception allowing them to pick up snippets of thought and emotion from the crew. "Something's wrong," Tara said, her eyes meeting Keith's. He nodded, feeling the weight of their newfound responsibility. "We need to find out what's happening. Our abilities might be the key to resolving this situation." As they stood, their movements perfectly synchronized, neither noticed the faint glow emanating from the secure laboratory behind them. Inside, the mutant rat creature's eyes flickered with an otherworldly intelligence as it absorbed the thoughts and knowledge of those around it, its consciousness expanding at an alarming rate. The station hung in space, its immediate crisis averted but new challenges looming on the horizon. The fates of 3 species now rested in the hands of those aboard, their decisions in the coming hours poised to shape the future of interstellar relations. Relations and the evolution of life in the galaxy. As Keith and Tara stood, their bodies still adjusting to the latest changes, a subtle shimmering caught their attention. Their skin had taken on an iridescent quality, pulsing gently in sync with their shared thoughts. Dr. Rodriguez approached, her eyes wide with fascination. "Extraordinary," she breathed, running a scanner over their arms. "Your physiology continues to evolve. I'd like to run some non-invasive tests to study the extent of these changes." Keith nodded, his enhanced senses picking up the doctor's mixture of excitement and concern. "Of course, Doctor. But first, we need to address the situation with the Xindi." As if on cue, Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the intercom. "Burns, Tara, report to the secure interrogation room immediately." They made their way through the station's corridors, their movements perfectly in sync. Crew members they passed stared openly, some with awe, others with unease. The weight of their transformation hung heavy in the air. Steele met them outside the interrogation room, his face a mask of dogged drive. "I need you to use your abilities on the Xindi commander. We need answers, and we need them now." Tara's brow furrowed. "Colonel, the ethical implications dash." "I understand your concerns," Steele cut her off, "but Earth's Defense Council is breathing down my neck. We don't have the luxury of time." Keith and Tara exchanged a look, their telepathic bond conveying a complex mix of emotions. After a moment, they nodded in unison. "We'll do it," Keith said. The door slid open, revealing Commander G.R. Rail. The Xenni's eyes widened as Keith and Tara entered, his whiskers twitching violently. A low growl rumbled in his throat. "What manner of abomination is this?" G.R. Rail hissed, pressing back against his chair. Keith stepped forward, his voice calm. "We're here to understand, Commander. To find a way forward without more bloodshed." As Keith and Tara approached, their minds reached out, forming a telepathic link with the Xindi. G.R. Rail's thoughts flooded into their shared consciousness, a chaotic swirl of fear, anger, and desperation. Images flashed through their minds. Xindi High Command, frantic discussions about human-alien hybridization, plans to isolate Earth and destroy research facilities. The attack on the station wasn't just an act of aggression. It was born of terror. "They're afraid of us," Tara whispered, her voice thick with realization. "Of what we represent." Before they could delve deeper, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow. "Security breach in the research lab," a computerized voice announced. "Unknown organism loose in the station." Keith's enhanced hearing picked up the chaos erupting outside. Crew members shouted in confusion, their footsteps echoing as they ran through the halls. "The mutant," Keith said, his eyes meeting Tara's. "It must have escaped." They rushed out of the interrogation room, leaving the shaken G.R. Rail behind. As they sprinted towards the lab, they passed groups of crew members behaving erratically. Some clung to each other, while others seemed dazed and disoriented. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over their personal communicators. "Keith, Tara, the creature, we've named it Nexus. It's producing powerful pheromones. They're affecting the crew's behavior, inducing a strong urge for physical contact. Your hybrid physiology might provide some resistance." They arrived at the lab to find it in disarray. Shattered equipment littered the floor, and a gaping hole in the ventilation system showed Nexus's escape route. "It's grown," Tara said, examining the size of the hole. "Significantly." Security footage on a nearby monitor showed Nexus moving through the station's corridors. The creature had indeed increased in size, now roughly as large as a big dog. Its body shifted and contorted as it squeezed through tight spaces, displaying an unsettling level of adaptability. "We need to contain it," Keith said, his mind racing, "before the situation gets any worse." As if in response to his words, a scream echoed from down the hall. They rushed towards the sound, only to find two crew members locked in a frenzied embrace, their eyes glazed over. "The pheromones," Tara said, her nose wrinkling at the musky scent hanging in the air. "They're getting stronger." Keith nodded, feeling a faint pull himself, though their hybrid nature seemed to be providing some protection. "We need to track Nexus down. Fast." They moved through the station, following the trail of chaos left in Nexus's wake. Their enhanced senses allowed them to pick up traces of the creature's scent, leading them towards the Arboretum. As they ran, Keith and Tara's bond intensified. Their thoughts flowed seamlessly between them, individual consciousness blurring into a unified whole. They moved as one, anticipating each other's actions without a word spoken. They burst into the arboretum, lush vegetation providing a stark contrast to the sterile corridors of the station. In the center of the room, Nexus stood on its hind legs, its intelligent eyes fixed on them. To their shock, a voice echoed in their minds, a jumbled mix of human, Ocampa, and Xeni thought patterns. Creators, Nexus communicated. Why fear? Why chase? I am bridge. I am future. Keith and Tara froze, the implications of this development washing over them. Nexus wasn't just a mutation. It was a new form of intelligence, one that could potentially bridge the gap between species. Before they could respond, Colonel Steele's voice cut through the station's communication system. Attention all personnel. An Ocampa ship is approaching. Prepare for potential hostile boarding action. Keith and Tara shared a look of alarm. The situation was spiraling out of control, with Nexus's pheromones affecting the crew, interspecies tensions at a breaking point, and now the approach of an Ocampa ship. They stood at a crossroads that could determine the future of human-alien relations. As Nexus watched them with its unerringly intelligent eyes, Keith and Tara knew they had to act fast. The next few moments could shape the course of galactic history. The weight of their responsibility pressed down on them as they faced Nexus, its intelligent eyes fixed upon them with an unsettling intensity. Suddenly, Nexus's gaze seemed to pierce through their mental defenses. A torrent of chaotic thoughts and emotions flooded their minds, overwhelming their senses. Keith stumbled, his hand reaching for Tara as they both fell to their knees. Images and sensations cascaded through their consciousness. The fear of the Xenti, the curiosity of the Ocampa, the drive of humans, all mixed with an alien intelligence that defied comprehension. Their vision blurred, the world around them fading into a kaleidoscope of memories and instincts not their own. When they regained their senses, Nexus was gone. The arboretum stood empty, save for the rustling of leaves in the artificial breeze. Keith helped Tara to her feet, their skin tingling where they touched. "It's evolving faster than we thought," Tara said, her voice shaky. "We need to find it before Dash." Her words were cut off by Colonel Steele's voice over the intercom, tension evident in his tone. "Attention all personnel. An Ocampa ship has docked despite our attempts to prevent it. Prepare for potential hostile boarding." Keith and Tara shared a look of alarm. The situation was spiraling out of control faster than they could handle. As they moved to leave the arboretum, they noticed a change in their appearance. Their skin emitted a soft, pulsating glow that intensified when they touched. "Another mutation," Keith muttered, examining his arm. They made their way through the corridors, noting the increasing signs of chaos. Crew members moved erratically, some clinging to each other, others wandering in a daze. The musky scent of Nexus's pheromones hung heavy in the air, but Keith and Tara found they could resist its effects more easily now. As they approached the central hub, they encountered Dr. Rodriguez. Her eyes widened at their glowing appearance. "Your physiological changes are accelerating," she said, running a scanner over them. "This might be the key to neutralizing Nexus's effects. I need samples from both of you to synthesize a counteragent." Before they could respond, the doors to the docking bay slid open. A striking Ocampa female with silver hair and iridescent skin stepped through, flanked by a delegation. Her eyes locked onto Keith and Tara immediately. "I am Ambassador Liana," she announced, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "I demand to see the hybrids." Colonel Steele stepped forward, his eyes hardened. "Ambassador, this is a delicate situation. We have a potentially dangerous creature loose on the station." Liana's eyes narrowed. "A creature? What manner of being?" As Steele explained the situation, Keith and Tara felt a familiar presence brush against their minds. Nexus was on the move, heading towards the station's power core. We need to go, Keith said urgently. Nexus is interfacing with the main computer. Dr. Rodriguez grabbed their arms. Wait, I need your DNA to create the counteragent. It's our best chance to restore order. Tara nodded quickly. Take what you need, but hurry. As Rodriguez took their samples, alarms blared throughout the station. Red emergency lights bathed the corridors in an eerie glow. Security breach in Section 7, a computerized voice announced. Unknown organism detected in the power core. Steele's face hardened. I'm initiating emergency protocols. We'll seal off the affected areas to contain the spread of the pheromones. But that will trap crew members, Tara protested. We don't have a choice, Steele replied grimly. Go. Find Nexus. We'll do what we can here. As Keith and Tara raced towards the power core, they passed sealed bulkheads and heard the muffled sounds of trapped crew members. The weight of the colonel's decision hung heavy in the air. They reached the entrance to the power core, their skin glowing brighter in response to the danger. Through the reinforced window, they could see Nexus. The creature had grown significantly, its form shifting and adapting as it interfaced with the station systems. We need to get close enough to administer the counteragent, Keith said, his mind racing through possible strategies. Tara nodded, her thoughts intertwining with his. Their bond deepened, individual consciousness blurring into a unified whole. As one, they realized the truth. To face Nexus, they would need to embrace their hybrid nature fully. Their hands clasped together, skin shimmering with an otherworldly light. As they prepared to confront the being they had inadvertently created, neither Keith nor Tara noticed a faint disturbance in space outside the station, an ancient entity, drawn by the unprecedented merging of species, moving inexorably towards them. The fate of the station, and perhaps the galaxy itself, now rested on their ability to connect with and control Nexus. As the power core's door slid open, Keith and Tara stepped forward, their merged consciousness reaching out to the hybrid being that held the key to their future. As the power core's door slid open, Keith and Tara stepped forward, their merged consciousness reaching out to the hybrid being that held the key to their shared destiny. But as they crossed the threshold, their progress was suddenly halted. A series of loud clicks echoed through the corridor, followed by the whir of machinery coming to life. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing sleek, automated defense turrets. Nexus, Keith breathed, realizing the creature's influence had spread further than they'd anticipated. It's taken control of the security systems. No sooner had the words left his mouth than the turrets opened fire. Streams of energy bolts filled the air, forcing Keith and Tara to dive for cover behind a nearby console. We need to keep moving, Tara said, her eyes scanning the room for a path forward. Dr. Rodriguez is counting on us to administer the counteragent. Keith nodded, his mind already syncing with Tara's. Through their shared consciousness, they began to map out the turret's firing patterns, seeking gaps in the barrage. As one, they sprang into action. Their movements were fluid, almost balletic, as they weaved through the energy blasts. Keith rolled under a low-flying bolt, while Tara simultaneously vaulted over another, their actions perfectly complementing each other. They moved in perfect synchronization, their glowing skin leaving trails of light in their wake. To anyone watching through the security feeds, it would have appeared as an intricate dance rather than a desperate bid for survival. As they advanced, Keith used his enhanced strength to pry loose a piece of paneling, wielding it as a makeshift shield. Tara, meanwhile, focused on disabling the turrets, her fingers flying over control panels as they passed. One by one, the turrets fell silent, but as they approached the final stretch of corridor leading to the power core, they felt a sudden shift in the air. The temperature plummeted, their breath misting in front of them. Nexus is manipulating the life support systems, Tara realized, shivering despite her enhanced physiology. They pressed on, fighting against the rapidly dropping temperature. Ice began to form on the walls and floor, making their footing treacherous. But their shared focus kept them moving forward, each compensating for the other's slips and stumbles. As they finally reached the entrance to the power core, they were met with an awe-inspiring sight. Nexus had grown exponentially, its form now a shimmering, multi-limb entity that pulsated with raw energy. A barrier of pure power surrounded it, crackling and sparking. "Keith, Tara," Dr. Rodriguez's voice came from behind them. They turned to see her approaching with a security team, carrying a small case. "I've got the counteragent, but there's a complication." As Rodriguez explained the need for a deep tissue injection, Keith and Tara exchanged a look. The risk was immense, but they knew it was their only chance. "We'll have to establish a mental link with Nexus," Tara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Try to reason with it." Keith nodded, taking one of the injection devices from Rodriguez. As they prepared to confront Nexus, the creature suddenly ceased its interface with the station systems. Its multifaceted eyes focused on them with an unsettling intensity. In that moment, Keith and Tara felt a powerful psychic pull. It was as if Nexus was inviting them to join it, to become part of something greater than themselves. The sensation was overwhelming, a promise of power and understanding beyond anything they had experienced. They stood on the precipice of a monumental decision. The fate of the station, its crew, and perhaps the future of human-alien relations hung in the balance. Behind them, they could hear the distant sounds of chaos. The Xenni's coded message, the approach of Earth's prototype weapon, the Ocampus temporal device. But in this moment, there was only Nexus, its barrier of energy, and the choice that lay before them. As Keith and Tara stepped forward, hands clasped and minds linked, they knew that whatever they decided would irrevocably alter the course of their lives and the galaxy itself. The air crackled with tension as they approached the energy barrier, the counteragent clutched tightly in their free hands. Nexus's eyes followed their every move, its form shifting and pulsating with nearly unleashed power. The moment of truth had arrived, and the next few seconds would determine the outcome of this unprecedented encounter. Crisis. As they approached the energy barrier, hands intertwined and minds linked, Keith and Tara made a split-second decision. Instead of forcibly administering the counteragent, they chose to attempt communication with Nexus. Drawing upon their enhanced telepathic abilities, they projected their thoughts towards the shimmering entity. The air crackled with unseen energy as their minds reached out, creating a three-way mental link. The connection hit them like a thunderbolt. The station's lights flickered wildly, and alarms blared as the hybrid trio's minds merged. Keith and Tara gasped in unison, overwhelmed by a flood of sensations and memories from Nexus. They saw through the creature's eyes, experiencing its rapid evolution and the fear and confusion driving its actions. Fractured images flashed through their minds. The terror of being hunted by the Xenti, the wonder of first contact with humans, the aching loneliness of being unique in the universe. Simultaneously, Nexus gained insight into Keith and Tara's experiences. It felt their growing bond, their struggles with their changing bodies, and the weight of responsibility they carried. The creature absorbed the complex political situation surrounding them, understanding for the first time the far-reaching consequences of its actions. In this moment of shared consciousness, a flicker of mutual understanding passed between the three hybrid beings. Nexus's form pulsated, its multifaceted eyes softening as it processed this new information. Seizing the opportunity, Dr. Rodriguez cautiously approached the group. Her voice trembled slightly as she spoke, addressing not just Keith and Tara, but Nexus as well. "The counteragent," she explained, holding up the injection device. "It will stabilize your physiology and reduce the production of pheromones. It won't harm you, but it will help protect the crew." Through Keith and Tara's mental link, Nexus comprehended the nature of the counteragent and the full scope of its actions. The creature's form rippled, a silent acknowledgement passing through their shared consciousness. With a trembling hand, Dr. Rodriguez administered the injection. The effect was immediate. Nexus's form began to stabilize, its wild pulsations slowing to a steady rhythm. The oppressive miasma of pheromones that had filled the station started to dissipate. But as the chaos aboard the station began to subside, an unexpected reaction took hold. Nexus's body started to separate, splitting into 3 distinct entities. Keith and Tara watched in awe as the creature's hybrid nature manifested physically. A massive energy discharge erupted from Nexus, overloading the station's power systems. The room plunged into darkness, emergency red lights casting eerie shadows across the walls. When the main power flickered back to life, 3 figures stood where Nexus had been, a human male, an Ocampa female, and a young Xinti. The human hybrid blinked in confusion, his eyes darting around the room. The Ocampa female's silver hair shimmered in the restored light, her iridescent skin pulsing softly. The young Xinti crouched low, ears twitching at the unfamiliar sounds of the station. Keith and Tara felt the mental link shift, expanding to include these new beings. Though physically separate, all 5 hybrids now shared a telepathic bond, their minds intertwined in a complex web of thoughts and emotions. Before anyone could react to this new development, Ambassador Liana stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the Ocampa hybrid. "This being must be brought to our homeworld," she declared, her voice ringing with authority. "For study and protection." Colonel Steele's face hardened. "Nobody's going anywhere until we understand what's happened here." A gruff voice cut through the tension. Giarael, the escaped Xinti commander, pushed his way into the room, his eyes gleaming as he spotted the young Xinti hybrid. "The kit comes with me," he growled. "My fleet approaches. This one could be useful in negotiations." The room erupted into chaos as arguments broke out. Keith and Tara, still reeling from the intense mental connection, found their own bond had intensified. They could now share not just thoughts and emotions, but physical sensations as well. As the political situation threatened to spiral out of control, a new crisis emerged. The station's sensors blared a warning, detecting the approach of the Xinti fleet. Colonel Steele's voice cut through the din. "Everyone, stand down. All 3 hybrids are to be placed under quarantine in the medical bay immediately. Dr. Rodriguez, I want full examinations. We need to know if they pose any further threat." As security personnel moved to escort the new hybrids, Keith and Tara shared a look of understanding. Their enhanced abilities and shared consciousness would be crucial in the coming hours. The station's crew scrambled to prepare for the Xinti fleet's arrival. Keith and Tara, their bodies still adjusting to the intense mental connection, found themselves at the center of the preparations. Their merged minds worked in perfect synchronization, rapidly formulating defensive strategies and recalibrating weapon systems. As the first Xinti ships appeared on the long-range scanners, the station hung in a fragile balance. The crew, the Ocampa delegation, and the Earth Defense Council representatives faced a critical decision: attempt diplomatic negotiations, using the hybrid beings as leverage, or prepare for a potentially devastating space battle. Keith and Tara stood on the bridge, their hands clasped tightly, feeling the weight of the moment. Through their enhanced bond, they could sense the fear and perseverance of every person on the station. As the Xinti fleet drew nearer, they knew that their next actions would shape the future of interspecies relations in the galaxy. The view screen flickered to life, revealing the imposing form of the Xinti fleet commander. His feline eyes narrowed as he took in the scene before him, lingering on Keith and Tara's glowing forms. "You have something that belongs to us," the commander growled, his voice resonating through the bridge. "Surrender the hybrids and the traitor GRL, or face the consequences." Colonel Steele stepped forward, his teeth gritted in drive. "We're open to negotiation, Commander, but threats will get us nowhere. Perhaps we can find a solution that benefits all parties involved." As the tense dialogue unfolded, Keith and Tara felt a subtle shift in their shared consciousness. The three new hybrids in the medical bay were reaching out, their unique perspectives offering unexpected insights into the situation at hand. With the fate of the station hanging in the balance, Keith and Tara prepared to leverage their enhanced abilities and newfound connection with the other hybrids. They knew that the next few moments would be crucial in averting a war and potentially forging a new era of interspecies cooperation. Cooperation and understanding between species. As the Xeni fleet loomed ever closer, Keith and Tara's enhanced abilities kicked into overdrive. Their hands flew over the control panels, rapidly recalibrating the station's weapons and shields. Through their deepened bond, they worked in perfect synchronization, their minds processing tactical data at an unprecedented speed. Shields at 120% capacity, Keith announced, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. Tara nodded, her fingers dancing across the weapon's console. Phaser banks aligned for maximum efficiency. Torpedo yield increased by 15%. Colonel Steele watched the hybrid pair work, a mixture of awe and concern etched on his face. He turned to the communications officer. Any response from the Xeni? Negative, so they're maintaining radio silence. Steele's teeth clenched. He knew they needed a different approach. Keith, Tara, I need you to boost our communications array. We're going to try something unconventional. As the hybrid pair moved to enhance the station's communication capabilities, Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom. Colonel, we have a situation in the medical bay. Steele hurried to the nearest console, activating the video feed. The scene that greeted him was one of controlled chaos. Equipment floated freely in the air, held aloft by a localized anti-gravity field. At the center of it all stood Lyra, the Ocampa hybrid, her silver hair swirling around her as if caught in an invisible breeze. What's happening, Doctor? Steele demanded. Rodriguez's face appeared on the screen, her expression a mix of excitement and concern. The Ocampa hybrid, sir, she's exhibiting unprecedented abilities to manipulate energy fields. But that's not all. The camera panned to show Adam, the human hybrid, lying on a biobed. His face was lined with wrinkles that hadn't been there hours before. Adam is aging at an accelerated rate. If we can't stabilize his condition, he may only have days to live. Steele's mind raced, processing the implications of this new development. He turned to Ambassador Liana, who had been observing the unfolding events with keen interest. Ambassador, your people have experience with genetic manipulation. Is there anything you can do to help? Liana's eyes narrowed in thought. Perhaps, but we'll need more time. She hesitated, then seemed to come to a decision. There is another option, a device capable of creating a temporary spatial barrier around the station. It could buy us the time we need. Steele nodded, his decision made. Do it. As Liana left to retrieve the device, Steele turned back to Keith and Tara. I need you two to prepare a broadcast. We're going to show the Xeni and our allies the potential benefits of cooperative hybridization research. Use the new hybrids as proof of concept. Keith and Tara shared a look, their enhanced bond allowing them to communicate without words. They understood the weight of this task and the potential consequences of failure. Minutes later, Liana returned with a small, ornate device. This will create the barrier, but it requires a hybrid interface to function properly. Keith stepped forward. We'll do it. Tara joined him, their hands intertwining. As they connected with the device, energy surged through their bodies. Their consciousnesses merged completely, transcending their physical forms. In that moment, they were one being, one mind, experiencing a level of intimacy beyond anything they had known before. The air shimmered as the spatial barrier deployed, enveloping the station in a protective cocoon of energy. On the interface, the approaching Xeni fleet slowed, clearly caught off guard by this unexpected development. Steele wasted no time. Begin the broadcast. The station's enhanced communications array came to life, projecting a message to the Xeni fleet, the nearby Ocampa vessels, and the approaching Earth Task Force. Images of the hybrid beings filled the screen, showcasing their unique abilities and the potential they represented. Dr. Rodriguez's voice narrated the footage, explaining the medical and technological advancements made possible through hybridization research. The camera lingered on Lyra as she manipulated energy fields, on Kira as he demonstrated a blend of Xeni strength and human empathy, and on Adam as he shared insights gained from his accelerated life experiences. As the broadcast continued, tension on the bridge remained high. Keith and Tara stood motionless, their bodies glowing with energy as they maintained the spatial barrier. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, the strain of their task evident in their rigid postures. Suddenly, alarms blared across the medical bay. Dr. Rodriguez's panicked voice filled the comm system. Adam's condition is deteriorating rapidly. We need to act now if we're going to save him. Steele turned to the doctor's image on the screen. What do you need? Genetic material from all the hybrids, Rodriguez replied, her voice tight with urgency. It's risky, but it might be our only chance to stabilize his physiology. As Steele weighed this new crisis against the ongoing standoff with the Xeni, the view screen flickered. The imposing visage of the Xeni fleet commander appeared, his feline features twisted in a snarl of confusion and curiosity. You claim these. Abominations are the future? The commander growled. Explain yourselves, humans. Steele stepped forward, his posture straight and his voice steady. Commander, what you see here is not an abomination, but a new frontier. These hybrid beings represent the potential for our species to grow beyond our current limitations, to evolve. The Xeni commander's eyes narrowed, his gaze shifting to the images of the hybrids still being broadcast alongside the video feed. And what of the kid? The one you call Kira? At that moment, Kira's voice rang out from the medical bay. I am Xeni and human, Commander. I carry the strength of our people and the empathy of humanity. I am not less, but more. A heavy silence fell over the bridge as the Xeni commander processed this information. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez worked feverishly to prepare for the risky procedure that might save Adam's life. And at the heart of it all, Keith and Tara stood locked in their intimate embrace, their merged consciousness holding the fragile bubble of safety around the station. The next few moments would determine the fate of not just the station and its inhabitants, but potentially the future of interspecies relations throughout the galaxy. As all parties held their breath, waiting for the Xeni commander's response, the delicate balance of power hung by a thread, ready to tip towards either conflict or a new era of cooperation. Cooperation and understanding between species. As the Xeni fleet loomed ever closer, an unexpected phenomenon began to unfold. Keith and Tara's bodies suddenly emitted a soft, pulsating glow that spread rapidly throughout the station. The light enveloped every inhabitant, human and alien alike, creating a shimmering aura that seemed to ripple through the air. Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled over the intercom, filled with a mix of awe and scientific curiosity. Colonel, I'm detecting unprecedented changes in neural activity across the station. This energy field appears to be enhancing empathic abilities and reducing aggressive tendencies in all species. Steele watched in amazement as the tension on the bridge visibly dissipated. Even the Xeni prisoners, including Commander Jarrail, became noticeably calmer, their previously aggressive demeanors softening into something more contemplative. Doctor, Steele said, his voice steady despite the extraordinary situation. Can you explain what's happening? I'm calling it the Harmony Field, Rodriguez replied, her words tumbling out in excitement. It seems to be emanating from Keith and Tara's connection to the Ocampa device. Their intimate bond has triggered some sort of empathic resonance that's affecting everyone on board. Steele's mind raced with the implications. He turned to the communications officer. "Hail the Xeni fleet. Let's see if we can use this to our advantage." As the officer worked to establish contact, alarms blared from the medical bay. Rodriguez's tone shifted from excitement to urgency. "Colonel, Adam's condition is critical. We need to start the procedure now." In the medical bay, Lyra and Kira assisted Rodriguez as she began the risky process of stabilizing Adam's hybrid physiology. They carefully extracted genetic material from themselves, Keith and Tara, combining it in a specialized chamber. Adam's body writhed on the biobed, his form shifting and pulsing with energy. As Rodriguez injected the combined genetic material, Adam's transformation accelerated. His features blurred, skin shimmering with an otherworldly light. Back on the bridge, the view screen flickered to life, revealing the Xeni fleet commander. His usual fierce expression had softened, replaced by a look of confusion and curiosity. What is the sensation?" the commander asked, his voice lacking its usual growl. Steele seized the opportunity. "Commander, what you're experiencing is a result of our hybridization research. We call it the harmony field. It's enhancing our ability to understand and empathize with each other." The commander's eyes widened as he processed this information. "Our warriors, they're reporting similar effects. Our battle readiness is compromised." "Not compromised," Steele corrected gently. "Enhanced. We have an opportunity here for true understanding between our species." As Steele continued his diplomatic overture, Keith and Tara's connection to the Ocampa device intensified. The station's power systems began to fluctuate, warning lights flashing across control panels. "Colonel," the chief engineer's voice cut in, "the energy output from the Ocampa device is overloading our systems. We're losing life support and artificial gravity. We need to disconnect it now." Steele found himself facing an impossible choice: disconnect the device and drop the spatial barrier, leaving them vulnerable to the Xeni fleet, or risk the station's destruction to maintain their only defense. Before he could decide, Keith and Tara acted. Their bodies still glowing with energy, they began to separate from the Ocampa device. As they did, the spatial barrier flickered and faded, leaving the station exposed. In that critical moment, a new presence made itself known on the bridge. Adam, his body now a swirling mass of energy and matter, stepped forward. His skin shimmered with an otherworldly light, and his eyes held a depth of knowledge that seemed to span centuries. "I can help," Adam said, his voice resonating with power. He raised his hands, and the harmony field intensified, pulsing outward from the station in concentric waves. The effect on the Xeni fleet was immediate. On the screen, the commander's expression shifted from confusion to wonder. This is remarkable," he breathed. "I can feel the intentions, the hopes of your people, and you can feel ours." Steele watched in awe as Adam manipulated the harmony field, focusing its effects on the Xeni ships. The fleet hung motionless in space, their weapons powered down, their crews experiencing a level of empathy and understanding previously unimaginable. "Commander," Steele said, seizing the moment, "I propose we begin face-to-face negotiations, not as enemies, but as potential allies. The hybridization research that created the harmony field could benefit both our species in ways we've only begun to imagine." The Xeni commander nodded slowly, his usual aggression replaced by thoughtful consideration. "Agreed. Prepare for our arrival. We have much to discuss." As the communication ended, Steele turned to face his crew. Keith and Tara stood hand in hand, their bodies still illuminated by the aftereffects of their connection to the Ocampa device. Lyra and Kira had joined them on the bridge, their unique abilities amplified by the harmony field. And at the center of it all stood Adam, his transformed body a testament to the potential of their hybridization research. "Well done, all of you," Steele said, his voice filled with pride and hope. Now, let's prepare for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. As the station's crew bustled into action, readying themselves for the arrival of the Xeni delegation, the hybrid beings shared a look of understanding. They had unlocked something profound, a power that could reshape the very fabric of interspecies relations. But as the Xeni ships drew nearer, they knew that the real challenges and opportunities were only just beginning. As the Xeni ships drew nearer, the station's crew worked feverishly to prepare for the diplomatic meeting that could reshape the galaxy. Suddenly, the harmony field expanded, enveloping the approaching Xeni fleet. The effect was immediate and profound. The once aggressive warriors' demeanors softened visibly, their hostile expressions melting into looks of wonder and curiosity. Colonel Steele, recognizing the unprecedented opportunity before them, acted swiftly. "We need to capitalize on this moment," he announced to his senior staff. "Prepare our largest conference room for an emergency summit. We'll invite representatives from Earth, the Ocampa, and the Xeni." As the crew scrambled to make preparations, Keith and Tara's physiological changes continued to evolve. Their skin now emitted a soft, pulsating glow that intensified when they touched. Dr. Rodriguez observed them with fascination. "Remarkable," she murmured, running a scanner over their joined hands. "You seem to be able to manipulate the harmony field on a localized level. This could be invaluable during the negotiations." Meanwhile, Adam's newfound abilities were manifesting in unexpected ways. As he stood on the bridge, his eyes unfocused, he felt the ebb and flow of emotions around him. With a thought, he could amplify or dampen the harmony field's effects on specific individuals. Lieutenant Sarah Ross approached him cautiously. "Adam, we need to talk about your new abilities. They're incredible, but we need to ensure they're not misused." Adam nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of his newfound power. As delegates began arriving at the station, the Xeni warriors' behavior took an unexpected turn. A group of them gathered in the reception area, their eyes fixed on a piece of abstract human art. The interplay of color and form. "It speaks to the duality of existence," one Xeni mused, his tail swishing thoughtfully. Nearby, another Xeni engaged an Ocampa scientist in an animated discussion about quantum mechanics. The sight was so incongruous that several human crew members stopped to stare. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she reviewed her latest findings. "Lyra, Kira, come look at this," she called to her hybrid assistants. "The hybridization process isn't just enhancing physical and mental capabilities. It's unlocking latent psionic abilities present in all three species." As the implications of this discovery sank in, the station shuddered. Chief Engineer Marcus Wong's voice crackled over the intercom. "Colonel, we're experiencing power fluctuations. The harmony field is interacting with our antimatter core in ways we didn't anticipate." Steele's brow furrowed. "Can you stabilize it?" "We're trying, sir, but—" Another violent shudder cut Wong off. Keith and Tara exchanged a look. "We can help," Keith said, stepping forward. "Our connection to the harmony field. We might be able to interface directly with the core." Steele hesitated only a moment before nodding. "Do it." As Keith and Tara made their way to engineering, a new complication arose. A group of human purists, led by the charismatic Dr. Eleanor Graves, had managed to infiltrate the station. They moved quietly through the maintenance tunnels, planning devices designed to disrupt key systems. "We cannot allow this abomination to continue," Graves whispered to her followers. "Humanity must remain pure." In engineering, Keith and Tara approached the pulsing antimatter core. As they reached out to touch it, their bodies began to glow more intensely. The moment their hands made contact with the core's housing, they gasped in unison. Their consciousnesses merged not just with each other, but with the very essence of the station itself. Through this connection, they became aware of the saboteurs. Keith's voice echoed in Tara's mind. We have to warn them. On the bridge, Adam suddenly stiffened. His eyes glowed as he turned to Colonel Steele. Sir, there are intruders on board. I can sense their intentions. They mean to disrupt the negotiations. Steele immediately activated ship-wide security protocols. All personnel, we have hostile intruders on board. Security teams, sweep the station. All delegates are to remain in secured areas until further notice. As security teams mobilized, Ambassador Liana of the Ocampa approached Steele. Colonel, I believe I have a solution that could address many of our current crises. She outlined her proposal for a living space station, one that could adapt and sustain itself using a combination of Ocampa biotechnology and the unique abilities of the hybrid beings. Steele listened intently, his mind racing with the possibilities. Before he could respond, another violent shudder rocked the station. In engineering, Keith and Tara's bodies were now engulfed in a blinding light as they struggled to contain the antimatter core's instability. It's not enough, Tara gasped. We need more. As if in response to her plea, Adam, Lyra, and Kira burst into engineering. Without a word, they joined Keith and Tara, forming a circle around the core. As their hands linked, a surge of energy pulsed through them and into the station. The effect was immediate and awe-inspiring. The station's corridors began to pulse with life, organic systems forming and integrating with the existing technology. The delegates watched in amazement as walls shifted and flowed, creating new spaces perfectly suited for interspecies cooperation. In the maintenance tunnels, Dr. Graves and her followers felt the changes rippling through the station. As the walls around them began to shift, they found themselves being gently but firmly guided towards the main conference room. As the station continued its metamorphosis, guided by the combined powers of the 5 hybrid beings, all those aboard realized they were witnessing the birth of a new era in cosmic history. The negotiations that were about to begin would shape not just the future of individual species, but the very nature of life in the galaxy. Colonel Steele stood at the center of the transformed conference room. Delegates from Earth, the Xini, and the Ocampa gathered around him. The air thrummed with possibility and tension as he prepared to call the historic summit to order. Order! The air in the room crackled with tension and possibility. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. The newly formed organic walls pulsed with an angry red glow, and Steele's communicator chirped urgently. Colonel, we have a situation. Keith's voice came through, strained and urgent. Dr. Graves and her followers have released a nanite swarm into the station systems. It's attacking the new organic components. Steele's eyes widened. Everyone stay calm, he addressed the delegates. We're dealing with a security threat. As if in response to his words, the room shuddered. The organic walls rippled, and several delegates gasped as they watched a visible wave of distortion move through the structure. In engineering, Keith and Tara stood with their hands still pressed against the antimatter core, their bodies glowing with energy. They could feel the nanite spreading through the station's newly formed neural pathways, like a digital infection. We need to act fast, Tara said, her voice echoing with an otherworldly resonance. The station is fighting back, but it needs our help. Keith nodded, and together they reached out with their minds, connecting more deeply with the station's core. They triggered a cascade of internal defenses, organic antibodies flooding the station's systems to combat the invasive nanites. Meanwhile, Adam, Lyra, and Kira sprang into action. Adam's eyes glowed as he extended his awareness through the harmony field, mapping the spread of the nanite infection. There, he pointed, directing Lyra and Kira to the areas most affected. Lyra's hands crackled with energy as she manipulated force fields to contain the nanite swarms. Kira moved with inhuman speed and agility, physically removing infected components where necessary. The station's transformation accelerated in response to the threat. Corridors sealed and unsealed autonomously, redirecting crew and delegates to safe areas. Bioluminescent patterns flowed along the walls, indicating the progress of the internal battle against the nanites. Colonel Steele's voice came over the station-wide comm system. All non-essential personnel, report to designated safe zones immediately. Security teams, initiate Protocol Omega. Find and apprehend Dr. Graves and her followers. Lieutenant Sarah Ross led her security team through the rapidly changing layout of the station. The hunt for the saboteurs became a tense game of cat and mouse as corridors shifted and reformed around them. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez worked feverishly alongside the Ocampa delegation. "We need to reprogram these nanites," she muttered, her fingers flying over a console. "Turn them from destroyers into helpers." An Ocampa scientist nodded, his hands hovering over a pulsating organic interface. "If we can synchronize the reprogramming with the station's new neural network, we might be able to distribute the fix instantly." As they worked, a group of Xeni warriors entered the medical bay. Their fur stood on end, but their eyes were clear and focused. "We wish to assist," the lead Xeni said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "Our enhanced senses may be of use in detecting the nanite concentrations." Dr. Rodriguez nodded, grateful for the unexpected help. "Of course. We need all the assistance we can get." Back in engineering, Keith and Tara's connection to the station deepened. Their consciousness expanded, encompassing not just each other in the core, but the entire station and all its inhabitants. Through this vast network of awareness, they directed the anti-nanite countermeasures with incredible precision. As the reprogrammed nanites were released, waves of energy pulsed through the station. The walls rippled with light, and new structures began to form. Advanced life support systems materialized, along with cutting-edge research laboratories and revolutionary propulsion mechanisms. Adam, still coordinating efforts through the Harmony field, made a startling discovery. He found he could enhance the cognitive abilities of those around him, boosting their problem-solving skills and creativity. "Dr. Rodriguez," he called out, his voice resonating with newfound power. "I think I can help accelerate your work." As Adam's influence spread, the efforts to save the station redoubled. Innovations and solutions emerged at an astonishing rate, with crew members and delegates alike contributing ideas and insights. The immediate threat of the nanite swarm began to subside, but the station's evolution was just the beginning. New sensory organs developed, allowing it to detect a wide range of phenomena across the electromagnetic spectrum. A form of faster-than-light communication emerged, linking the station to distant parts of the galaxy. As the crisis abated, a new signal caught the attention of the station's enhanced sensors. In the nearby asteroid belt, a group of crystalline entities initiated first contact. Their silicon-based biology presented an entirely new paradigm, adding yet another layer of complexity to the ongoing interspecies discussions. Ships from various species across the galaxy began to converge on the station's location, drawn by news of its incredible transformation. The living station, now a symbol of interspecies cooperation and hybrid evolution, became a focal point for a potential galactic alliance. In the midst of this cosmic convergence, Keith and Tara found their relationship evolving in ways they never imagined. Their shared connection with the station's core opened new avenues for intimacy and understanding that transcended physical boundaries. As the immediate danger passed and the station stabilized in its new form, Colonel Steele reconvened the delegates. The conference room, now a living, breathing space that adapted to the needs of its occupants, hummed with anticipation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Steele began, his voice steady despite the chaos they had just endured. "We stand at a crossroads of galactic history. The events of the past few hours have changed everything. We must now consider not just the future of our individual species, but the future of life itself in this galaxy." The delegates murmured in agreement, their eyes wide with the possibilities that lay before them. As discussions resumed, now including representatives from the newly arrived races. The hybrid beings Keith, Tara, Adam, Lyra, and Kira found themselves at the center of attention. They exchanged glances, each aware of the weight of responsibility that now rested on their shoulders. They were no longer just individuals, but living bridges between species, between organic and technological, between the past and a future filled with untold potential. As the negotiations entered a new phase, the hybrid station pulsed with life and possibility. The next chapter in galactic history was about to unfold, and its pages were still waiting to be written. The station hummed with new life, its organic walls pulsing with a soft, bioluminescent glow. As the immediate crisis subsided, Keith and Tara found themselves drawn to each other with an intensity that surprised them both. "I've never felt anything like this," Keith murmured, his eyes locked on Tara's. Tara nodded, feeling the pull of their shared connection. "It's like I can sense your every thought, your every emotion." Without a word, they retreated to a newly formed alcove, seeking a moment of privacy amidst the chaos. The organic walls seemed to respond to their presence, curving inward to create a cocoon-like space. As Keith and Tara explored their deepening bond, Dr. Rodriguez was engrossed in a different kind of discovery. The arrival of the crystalline entities from the nearby asteroid belt had sent ripples of excitement through the scientific community aboard the station. "Fascinating," Dr. Rodriguez breathed, her eyes wide as she observed the silicon-based life forms through a specialized containment field. "Lyra, are you seeing this?" The Ocampus scientist nodded, her delicate fingers dancing over a console. "Their molecular structure is unlike anything we've encountered before. It seems they communicate through complex light patterns and vibrations." Colonel Steele, recognizing the diplomatic significance of this new contact, strode into the lab. "Doctor, I need you to initiate first contact protocols immediately. We're organizing a formal reception for our new guests." As the scientist prepared for the unprecedented meeting, Adam found himself at the center of attention. Steele approached him, a look of commitment on his face. "Adam, we need your harmony field abilities. These crystalline entities, their thought processes are completely alien to us. Can you help bridge the gap?" Adam nodded, feeling the familiar surge of energy as he activated his powers. "I'll do my best, sir." The reception area buzzed with anticipation as delegates from various species gathered. Adam stood at the center, his eyes glowing faintly as he extended his consciousness, ready to facilitate communication. As the crystalline entities entered, their faceted bodies refracting light in mesmerizing patterns, a hush fell over the room. Adam reached out with his mind, feeling the alien consciousness brush against his own. Suddenly, Kira, the young Xeni hybrid, stiffened. A wave of pheromones surged from his body, flooding the room with an invisible tide of chemical signals. The effect was immediate and chaotic. Several Ocampa delegates gasped, their eyes dilating. A group of Xeni warriors bristled, their fur standing on end. Even the crystalline entities seemed affected, their light patterns shifting rapidly. Lieutenant Sarah Ross reacted quickly, her security team moving to contain the situation. "Everyone remain calm," she called out, her voice steady despite the rising tension. As Ross and her team worked to manage the pheromone-induced chaos, Dr. Eleanor Graves saw her opportunity. Slipping away from her guards, she made her way to a remote section of the station still in flux. Her eyes gleamed as she discovered a cache of experimental weapons, left behind by a secret Earth military project. "Perfect," she whispered, hefting a sleek, unfamiliar rifle. "This will do nicely." Back in their private alcove, Keith and Tara's intimate moment was abruptly interrupted. They both tensed, sensing a disturbance through their connection to the station. "Do you feel that?" Tara asked, her voice tight. Keith nodded, his expression grim. "Something's wrong. We need to find Colonel Steele." As they rushed through the station's shifting corridors, Keith and Tara found themselves hyper-aware of each other's presence. Every accidental brush of their hands sent sparks of sensation through their bodies, their newly heightened connection making it difficult to focus. They burst into the command center, where Steele was coordinating efforts to manage the chaos from Kira's pheromone surge. "Colonel," Keith said, fighting to keep his voice steady as Tara's proximity sent waves of distraction through him. "We detected unusual energy readings. We think Dr. Graves has escaped and found some kind of weapon." Steele's eyes narrowed. "Damn it. We can't afford another crisis right now." He turned to his communications officer. "Initiate a station-wide search, and get me a team ready to move out." As Steele issued orders, the crystalline entities began interacting with the station's organic components. Where they touched, new structures began to form, accelerating the station's transformation. "Sir," a junior officer called out, his voice tinged with panic. "The internal layout is changing faster than we can map it. We're losing track of whole sections." Steele turned to Keith and Tara. "I need you two to lead a team to find Graves. Your connection to the station might be our only way to navigate this mess." As Keith and Tara assembled their team, Adam made a breakthrough with the crystalline entities. Using his harmony field, he managed to establish a rudimentary form of communication. "Colonel," Adam called out, his voice strained with effort, "I think I can transfer linguistic abilities between our translator systems and the entities. It's not perfect, but it's a start." As the station continued to evolve and transform around them, Keith and Tara led their team through the shifting corridors. The hunt for Dr. Graves was on, but with each step, the challenges they faced grew more complex. The future of the station, and perhaps the galaxy itself, hung in the balance. As they pressed forward, Keith and Tara knew that their evolving bond would be put to the ultimate test. As Keith and Tara pressed forward, the station's corridors began to shift and undulate around them. What had once been familiar passageways twisted into an organic labyrinth, pulsing with bioluminescent veins. "This is new," Keith muttered, placing a hand on a nearby wall. The surface rippled beneath his touch, responding to his heightened emotions. Tara nodded, her eyes scanning the ever-changing environment. "The station's defense mechanisms must be evolving. We need to find a way through this maze." As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the walls seemed to close in, forcing the team to move in single file. Keith took the lead, with Tara close behind. The proximity of their bodies sent waves of awareness crackling between them, their connection intensified by the station's responsive environment. Suddenly, the tunnel forked into 3 separate paths. Keith hesitated, unsure which way to proceed. As he turned to consult with Tara, their eyes met, and a jolt of electricity passed between them. The walls around them pulsed brightly in response, causing the rest of the team to shield their eyes. "We need to focus," Tara said, her voice strained. "Our connection is affecting the station." Keith nodded, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "Right, let's split up. Team Alpha, take the left path. Bravo, the right. Tara and I will take the center." As the team separated, Keith and Tara found themselves alone in the twisting corridor. The walls continued to shift, responding to their proximity and heightened emotions. Meanwhile, in the diplomatic reception area, chaos erupted as Kira's pheromones surged through the room. The crystalline entities, their faceted bodies gleaming, began to vibrate at an alarming frequency. The air itself seemed to shimmer with the intensity of their resonance. Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the station's communication system, distorted by interference. "All units were experiencing widespread comm disruptions. Stand by for..." His message cut off abruptly, leaving the reception in a state of confusion. Ambassador Zyrax, the bioluminescent cephalopod-like leader of the aquatic delegation, pulsed with agitation inside his water-filled envirosuit. "This is unacceptable," Zyrax gurgled through his translator. "Our life support systems are malfunctioning. We demand immediate assistance." Adam, his eyes glowing with the effort of maintaining his harmony field, stepped forward. "I can help," he said, his voice strained. "But I need everyone to remain calm." Extending his abilities, Adam created a localized dampening effect around Kira. The young Xeni hybrid's eyes widened as his pheromone production suddenly ceased. However, the abrupt change had an unexpected effect on those who had been exposed to the pheromones. Several delegates began to exhibit signs of withdrawal. An Ocampa diplomat swayed on her feet, her eyes unfocused. A human representative began to sweat profusely, his hands shaking. Even the stoic Xeni warriors showed signs of distress, their fur filled erratically. In the science lab, Dr. Rodriguez and Lyra huddled around a console, their faces illuminated by rapidly scrolling data. "This is incredible," Dr. Rodriguez breathed. "The station isn't just integrating our thoughts. It's developing the ability to project them." As if on cue, holographic displays flickered to life throughout the station. Vivid images of shared memories and emotions filled the corridors, creating a kaleidoscope of experiences. Back in the labyrinth, Keith and Tara rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with one of these projections. Their eyes widened as they saw themselves, locked in an intimate embrace, their deepest desires laid bare for all to see. "Oh no," Tara whispered, her face flushing. The rest of their team, having rejoined them, stood in awkward silence. Keith cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "We need to keep moving. Dr. Graves is still out there, and we're running out of time." As they pressed on, the station's transformations accelerated. New structures sprouted from the walls, ceilings, and floors, creating specialized environments for each visiting species. A misty, humid section formed for the amphibious delegates, while a crystalline chamber took shape to accommodate the silicon-based entities. In a remote section of the station, Dr. Graves activated one of the experimental weapons she had discovered. A pulse of energy rippled through the corridors, temporarily neutralizing the hybrid adaptations of those within its range. Keith and Tara stumbled, suddenly disoriented as their connection to the station systems vanished. They looked at each other in shock, their enhanced abilities stripped away, leaving them feeling vulnerable and exposed. "What just happened?" Keith gasped, steadying himself against a wall. Tara shook her head, trying to clear the fog from her mind. "I don't know, but we've lost our connection to the station. We're normal again." As they grappled with this sudden change, Dr. Graves slipped past their search team, disappearing deeper into the station's shifting maze. In the command center, Colonel Steele surveyed the mounting crises with growing concern. The aquatic delegation's envirosuits were failing, diplomatic tensions were rising, and now large sections of the station were going dark as Dr. Graves' weapon took effect. Making a split-second decision, Steele turned to Adam. "We need your help. Can you transfer some of your diplomatic and problem-solving skills to key members of our crew?" Adam hesitated, aware of the ethical implications. "I can, sir, but are you sure? This could fundamentally alter their identities, even if temporarily." Steele nodded grimly. "We're out of options." "Do it." As Adam began to work his abilities on selected crew members, Kira approached, his enhanced senses on high alert. "Colonel, I can track Dr. Graves." "Let me help." Steele considered the offer for a moment before nodding. "Do it, but be careful. We need her alive." Kira set off, his Xeni hunting instincts guiding him through the station's chaotic layout. As he closed in on Dr. Graves' scent, flashes of his warrior training surged through his mind, creating a conflict between his aggressive instincts and his desire for a peaceful resolution. Throughout the station, the holographic projections continued to evolve, now displaying Dr. Graves' memories and motivations. Images of her fears and the reasons behind her actions flickered across the walls, providing unexpected insight into her psyche. As the crises converged, the station itself seemed to pulse with life, its rapid evolution outpacing anyone's ability to control or predict. The fate of the hybrid experiment, the diplomatic summit, and potentially the future of galactic civilization hung in the balance as the inhabitants of the living station raced against time to prevent disaster. As the station continued its rapid evolution, Keith and Tara found themselves grappling with an unexpected challenge. The pulse from Dr. Graves' weapon had stripped away their hybrid abilities, leaving them feeling vulnerable and disoriented in the ever-shifting organic maze. Keith pressed his hand against a pulsating wall, feeling nothing but cold, unyielding surface where moments before he had sensed the living essence of the station. "It's like we've been cut off," he muttered, frustration evident in his voice. Tara nodded, her eyes scanning the undulating corridor ahead. "We're back to square one. No enhanced senses, no connection to the station systems. Just us." As they pressed forward, the lack of their hybrid abilities wasn't the only obstacle they faced. With each step, each accidental brush of their bodies in the narrow passageways, Keith and Tara found themselves hyper-aware of each other's presence. The air between them seemed to crackle with unspoken tension. "We need to focus," Tara said, her voice tight as she sidestepped Keith in a particularly narrow section. The brief contact sent a jolt through both of them, and the walls around them pulsed in response. Keith took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "You're right, but it's getting harder to ignore this." He gestured vaguely between them. After a moment of tense silence, Tara made a decision. "We should split up, cover more ground, and minimize distractions." Keith nodded, relief and disappointment warring in his expression. "Agreed. I'll take the left fork up ahead. You take the right. We'll rendezvous at the next major junction." As they parted ways, both felt a mix of relief and loss. The mission to find Dr. Graves took precedence, but the pull between them remained strong, even without their enhanced connection. Meanwhile, Kira was making progress in his hunt for Dr. Graves. His Xinti senses, unaffected by the weapon's pulse, allowed him to track her scent through the station's transforming sections. As he rounded a corner, his ears twitched at the sound of hushed voices. Crouching low, Kira peered into a newly formed chamber. A group of humans huddled together, their voices urgent and filled with purpose. Among them, Kira recognized several faces from the station's crew manifest, members of the Human Purist movement. "Dr. Graves needs more time," one of them hissed. "We need to create a diversion." Kira's Xini instincts surged, urging him to attack, to eliminate the threat. But his human side held him back, reminding him of the value of life, of finding peaceful solutions. Taking a deep breath, Kira stepped into view. "Stop right there," he growled, his voice a mix of human speech and Xini rumble. The group whirled to face him, expressions of shock and disgust crossing their faces. "Abomination!" one of them spat, reaching for a weapon. In that moment, Kira made his choice. Moving with lightning speed, he disarmed the man with a precise strike, then whirled to face the others. His movements were a blur of controlled aggression, each blow carefully calculated to subdue without causing permanent harm. Within seconds, the group lay groaning on the floor, stunned but largely unharmed. Kira stood over them, his chest heaving, a mix of satisfaction and remorse flowing through him. He had proven the worth of his hybrid nature, using Xini strength tempered by human restraint. As Kira secured the prisoners, Adam was grappling with a difficult decision in the command center. He had discovered a way to temporarily restore Keith and Tara's hybrid abilities, but it came with significant risk. "I can do it," Adam explained to Colonel Steele, his eyes glowing with the effort of maintaining his harmony field. "But I'll need to physically touch them both." It could expose me to the weapon's effects. Steele's brow furrowed. That's a hell of a risk, son. Are you sure about this? Adam nodded, his eyebrows furrowed. It's our best chance of finding Dr. Graves quickly. I have to try. As Adam set out to find Keith and Tara, Dr. Rodriguez and Lyra made a startling discovery in the science lab. Lyra's eyes widened as she analyzed the latest data stream. Dr. Rodriguez, look at this. The human scientist leaned in, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. Are those what I think they are? Lyra nodded, her voice filled with awe. Reproductive organs. The station is developing the capacity to create offspring. As they digested this information, a crisis was unfolding in the diplomatic reception area. Ambassador Zyrax's tentacles writhed in distress as his envirosuit systems continued to fail. We cannot survive much longer in these conditions. Zyrax gurgled through his translator. Suddenly, the floor beneath them began to ripple and shift. Water started to pour from newly formed organic ducts, quickly filling the chamber. The station, sensing the aquatic delegates' distress, had begun to create a suitable environment for them. However, this rapid transformation came at a cost. Throughout the station, power fluctuations caused lights to flicker and life support systems to falter. In the command center, Colonel Steele made a difficult decision. "Do it," he ordered, turning to the small group of officers Adam had enhanced with his skill transfer ability. The enhanced officers sprang into action, their movements fluid and precise as they worked to stabilize the station systems. Their unenhanced colleagues watched with a mix of awe and unease, the gap in their abilities now starkly apparent. As these events unfolded, Keith found himself in a hidden chamber, face to face with one of Dr. Graves' experimental weapons. His hand hovered over the device, intent on disabling it. But as his fingers brushed the control panel, a surge of energy coursed through him. Keith gasped, his senses suddenly exploding with input. The faintest vibrations in the air became thunderous, the dim light of the chamber blinding. Every nerve in his body screamed with heightened sensitivity. Staggering back, Keith tried to process the overwhelming sensory assault. Through the chaos, one thought crystallized. This unexpected enhancement could be the key to finding Dr. Graves. Gritting his teeth against the discomfort, Keith pressed on, his newly sharpened senses guiding him through the organic labyrinth with uncanny precision. Elsewhere, Tara stumbled upon a mesmerizing sight. A group of crystalline entities floated in a newly formed chamber, their faceted bodies pulsing with vibrant colors. As she watched, they began to intertwine, their structures merging and separating in a complex dance. Tara's scientific mind raced as she observed the process. The crystalline beings weren't just mating. They were interfacing directly with the station's organic systems. Where they touched, new hybrid structures sprouted, a seamless blend of crystal and living tissue. Incredible, Tara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. She realized that this process might hold the key to understanding the station's newfound reproductive capabilities. As Tara studied the crystalline mating ritual, Dr. Graves made her move. In a remote section of the station, she activated another of her weapons. A high-pitched whine filled the air as the device powered up, emitting a signal that interfered with the station's neural pathways. Throughout the station, hybrid individuals stumbled, their minds suddenly assaulted by vivid hallucinations. Keith, already struggling with his heightened senses, felt the ground tilt beneath him as memories and fantasies blurred into reality. Tara grabbed onto a wall for support as the chamber around her seemed to melt and reform, the crystalline entities transforming into shadowy figures from her past. But Kira, his hybrid physiology granting him a measure of resistance, pushed through the disorientation. His nostrils flared as he caught Dr. Graves' scent, stronger now. With a determined growl, he surged forward, closing in on his quarry. In a newly formed organic chamber, pulsing with its own consciousness. Kira finally cornered Dr. Graves. The human scientist whirled to face him, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and defiance. "It's over, Dr. Graves," Kira said, his voice a low rumble. Dr. Graves backed away, her hand tightening on her weapon. "You don't understand," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "This isn't about power or control. It's about preserving who we are. These hybrids, this station, they're changing the very nature of humanity. How long before we lose ourselves entirely?" As she spoke, the chamber's walls began to ripple with holographic projections. Images of Earth, of human history and culture, flickered around them. But interspersed with these were visions of new worlds, of hybrid species and unimaginable possibilities. Kira felt his Xindi aggression surge, urging him to subdue the threat. But as he looked at Dr. Graves, he saw not just an enemy, but a frightened human grappling with a changing universe. His human empathy rose to the surface, tempering his warrior instincts. "Change doesn't mean loss," Kira said, his voice softening. "It can mean growth, adaptation, survival. Look at me. I'm not just Xindi or human. I'm something new, something that can bridge worlds." As they stood there, locked in a moment of potential violence or understanding, the station's holographic projections shifted. Now they displayed Kira and Dr. Graves' own memories and emotions, laying bare their fears, hopes, and shared humanity. The confrontation balanced on a knife's edge, the future of the station, and perhaps the galaxy hanging in the balance. As Kira and Dr. Graves faced each other, surrounded by the swirling visions of their own psyches, the true test of humanity's ability to adapt and evolve was about to unfold. Suddenly, an ear-piercing alarm cut through the tense atmosphere, shattering the moment of contemplation between Kira and Dr. Graves. "Warning. Biohazard detected in Medical Bay. Initiating emergency lockdown procedures," the station's AI announced, its voice echoing through the organic corridors. Kira's ears twitched, his enhanced senses picking up the panic spreading through the station. Dr. Graves lowered her weapon, her face paling as she processed the implications of the announcement. "What have you done?" Kira growled, his Xindi instincts flaring. Dr. Graves shook her head, genuine confusion and fear evident in her eyes. "This isn't my doing, but whatever it is, it could be far worse than anything I had planned." Before Kira could respond, his communicator crackled to life. Colonel Steele's voice came through, tense and urgent. "All personnel, we have a situation in Medical Bay. Dr. Rodriguez's experiment has gone critical. Non-essential personnel are to evacuate immediately. Keith, Tara, report to Medical Bay entrance for emergency containment." Kira glanced at Dr. Graves, torn between his duty to apprehend her and the pressing crisis at hand. Making a split-second decision, he grabbed her arm. "You're coming with me. Your expertise might be needed." As they raced towards Medical Bay, they encountered Keith and Tara, who had just been restored to their hybrid state by Adam's intervention. The air between the two crackled with an almost visible energy, their bodies glowing softly in the dim light of the corridor. "What's the situation?" Kira asked, noting the protective suits they were donning. Tara's eyes darted to Dr. Graves, but she focused on the task at hand. "Dr. Rodriguez's hybrid DNA experiment has gone airborne. It's causing rapid transformations in non-hybrid individuals. We're going in to assist and contain the outbreak." Keith nodded, his gaze lingering on Tara. "The station's reacting to our presence more strongly than ever. It's like we can feel its pulse." As they approached the sealed doors of Medical Bay, they could see the chaos unfolding inside through the transparent sections. Crew members and alien delegates were writhing, their bodies morphing in ways that defied conventional biology. Crystalline growth sprouted from organic tissue, while others developed scales, feathers, or even translucent skin. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the intercom, strained and breathless. Keith, Tara, thank goodness you're here. The new strain is unlike anything we've seen. It's combining traits from multiple species at an alarming rate. Keith and Tara exchanged a look, their heightened connection allowing them to communicate without words. They stepped into the airlock, the door sealing behind them with a hiss. As the decontamination sequence began, Tara suddenly gasped, her body arching towards Keith. "Something's happening," she whispered, her voice thick with a mixture of alarm and arousal. Keith felt it too, a surge of energy coursing through his body, amplifying every sensation. The protective suit felt constrictive, almost painful against his hypersensitive skin. He could hear Tara's heartbeat, smell the pheromones her body was producing. It took every ounce of his willpower to focus on the mission at hand. The inner door opened, and they stepped into chaos. Dr. Rodriguez, her skin now shimmering with an iridescent sheen, rushed towards them. "The strain is accelerating hybrid transformation, but it's unstable. We need to stabilize the affected individuals and find a way to neutralize the airborne particles." As Keith and Tara moved through the bay, their enhanced abilities allowed them to manipulate the station's organic systems, reinforcing the quarantine barriers and adjusting life support to help the transforming individuals. But with each use of their powers, the sexual tension between them intensified, making it increasingly difficult to concentrate. Outside the quarantine zone, Kira and Dr. Graves worked with Colonel Steele to coordinate containment efforts. The crystalline entities, drawn by the hybrid energy emanating from Medical Bay, began to gather near the sealed doors. Their faceted bodies pulsed with light as they interfaced with the station's systems, causing new growths of organic crystalline structures to sprout along the walls. Ambassador Zyrax, his environmental crisis temporarily dedication, approached the group. "We may be able to assist," he gurgled through his translator. "Our bioengineering knowledge could help stabilize the hybrid strain." As they debated their options, Adam appeared, his eyes glowing with the intensity of his expanded consciousness. "I can feel the station's response to the outbreak," he said, his voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "It sees this as an opportunity for evolution, a chance to create a new form of life. But if I intervene, I risk losing myself to the collective consciousness." Colonel Steele surveyed the situation, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. The quarantine zone was expanding as the hybrid strain sought new hosts. If they couldn't contain it soon, he'd be forced to consider more drastic measures. Inside Medical Bay, Keith and Tara worked feverishly to stabilize the transforming individuals. Their bodies glowed brighter with each passing minute, their movements becoming more fluid and synchronized. As they brushed past each other in the crowded space, sparks seemed to fly from the point of contact. "Keith," Tara gasped, her eyes wide and pupils dilated. "I don't know how much longer I can." Her words were cut off as a newly transformed crew member stumbled into her, sending her crashing into Keith's arms. The moment their bodies connected, a surge of energy pulsed through the room. The organic walls of the station rippled in response, and the crystalline growths flared with brilliant light. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Keith and Tara stood frozen, their bodies pressed together, overwhelmed by the intensity of their connection. Around them, the chaos of the Medical Bay faded into the background as their consciousnesses began to merge, not just with each other, but with the very essence of the station itself. As they teetered on the brink of losing themselves in this new, shared awareness, alarms blared with renewed urgency. The station's voice echoed through the bay, warning, quarantine breach imminent, hybrid strain spreading to adjacent sections. The dire announcement snapped Keith and Tara back to reality. They separated, chests heaving, their eyes wild with a mixture of desire and persistence. They knew that the next few moments would be crucial. The fate of everyone on the station hung in the balance, and they were the only ones with the power to control the rapidly evolving situation. Outside, Colonel Steele's hand hovered over the controls that would seal off the entire section, potentially sacrificing those inside to save the rest of the station. As the crisis reached its boiling point, all eyes turned to Medical Bay, waiting to see if Keith and Tara could find a way to contain the outbreak before it was too late. Keith and Tara locked eyes, their bodies trembling with the effort of maintaining control. As they turned back to their work, Keith's arm brushed against a sharp edge of newly formed crystalline growth. The protective fabric of his suit tore with a soft hiss. Time seemed to slow as Keith's eyes widened in realization. "Tara, I've been exposed," he gasped, his voice tight with fear and something else, a thrilling anticipation he couldn't quite name. Tara spun towards him, her mouth opening to speak, but the words never came. Instead, she watched in fascination as Keith's body began to change before her eyes. His skin took on a shimmering quality, iridescent patterns rippling across his arms and face. His muscles swelled and reshaped, taking on a distinctly feline quality reminiscent of Kira's Xinti heritage. Keith staggered, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of sensory information. The medical bay exploded into vivid color and sound. He could hear the frantic heartbeats of everyone in the room, smell the fear and excitement mingling in the air. "Keith," Tara called out, reaching for him. As her gloved hand touched his bare skin, she felt a jolt of energy course through her. In that moment, she made a decision that would change everything. With deliberate movements, Tara began removing her own protective suit. "What are you doing?" Keith managed to ask, his voice deeper and more resonant than before. "The suits aren't effective anymore," Tara explained, her eyes never leaving Keith's transformed face. "If we're going to solve this, we need to understand it. Fully." As the last piece of her protective gear fell away, Tara felt the hybrid strain take hold. Her transformation was just as rapid as Keith's, but uniquely her own. Her Ocampa heritage asserted itself, her mental abilities expanding exponentially. The thoughts and emotions of everyone in the medical bay crashed over her like a tidal wave. Tara gasped, instinctively reaching out to Keith for support. As their hands connected, a surge of energy pulsed between them. Their minds intertwined, thoughts and feelings merging until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Through their shared consciousness, they became acutely aware of the changes sweeping through the station. The organic walls pulsed with new life, forming intricate patterns that seemed to reflect the genetic modifications occurring within the inhabitants. Dr. Rodriguez approached them cautiously, her own transformed body glistening under the medical bay lights. "Fascinating," she murmured, studying Keith and Tara with intense scientific curiosity. "Your hybridization appears to be stabilizing much more quickly than the others. This could be the key to managing the outbreak." Keith and Tara turned to face her in perfect unison, their movements fluid and synchronized. "We need to reach out to the others," Tara said, her voice carrying an otherworldly resonance. "Connect them, guide them through the change." Keith nodded, adding, "But first, we need to understand what's happening to the station itself. It's changing, evolving along with us." As if in response to Keith's words, the floor beneath them shuddered. New growth sprouted from the walls, forming intricate, organic structures that pulse with an inner light. The air filled with a fine, shimmering mist, the hybrid strain becoming visible to their enhanced senses. Outside the quarantine zone, chaos was spreading. Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the intercom, tension evident in every word. "The strain has breached containment. We're seeing transformations in adjacent sections. I need options, people." Through their mental link, Keith and Tara sensed the panic rising throughout the station. They could feel the fear of those trying to resist the change, the exhilaration of those embracing it, and the confusion of those caught in between. "We need to establish a connection," Tara said, her eyes glowing with psychic energy. "Not just with each other, but with everyone on the station. It's the only way to bring order to this chaos." Keith squeezed her hand, sharing her grit through their link. Agreed. But how do we reach that many minds at once? As they pondered this challenge, they became aware of a new sensation, a deep, rhythmic pulsing that seemed to emanate from the very core of the station. It was as if the entire structure was coming alive, its newly formed systems aligning with the transformed inhabitants. Dr. Rodriguez, who had been monitoring the station's vital signs, looked up from her console with a mix of awe and alarm. The station's reproductive systems are showing signs of activity. It's as if it's preparing to give birth. The implications of this statement hung heavy in the air. Keith and Tara exchanged a glance, their shared consciousness grappling with the enormity of what was unfolding around them. They knew that whatever came next would reshape not just their lives, but the future of known space. With a shared breath, Keith and Tara closed their eyes, focusing their enhanced abilities. They reached out with their minds, seeking the threads of consciousness that connected every being on the station. As they prepared to attempt this unprecedented psychic link, they could feel the hybrid strain continuing to spread, transforming both living beings and the station itself. The medical bay faded from their awareness as they stretched their senses outward, touching the minds of the station's inhabitants one by one. They could feel the resistance, the fear, the excitement, a swirling maelstrom of emotions and thoughts that threatened to overwhelm them. But Keith and Tara held fast to each other, their physical and mental connection anchoring them as they navigated this new frontier of shared consciousness. They knew that the next few moments would be crucial, not just for themselves, but for the future of the station and perhaps the entire galaxy. As they delved deeper into the collective mind of the station, they became aware of a new presence, vast, alien, and yet somehow familiar. The station itself was awakening, its consciousness unfurling like a flower opening to the sun. And as it stirred, Keith and Tara realized that they were standing on the threshold of a new era, one that would redefine the very meaning of life and evolution. Consciousness. The station pulsed around them, its newly formed organic structures resonating with the combined energy of Keith and Tara's minds. As they reached out to touch the thoughts of every being on the station, they were suddenly overwhelmed by an unexpected surge of sensation. Tara gasped, her body trembling as a wave of intense desire washed over her. Her Ocampa physiology, amplified by the hybrid strain, had triggered a powerful mating response. The air around her shimmered with pheromones, filling the medical bay with a heady, intoxicating scent. Keith's eyes widened as he felt the pull of Tara's pheromones, his own transformed body responding with a rush of heat and need. He gritted his teeth, struggling to maintain focus on their vital task. "Tara," he managed, his voice strained, "we need to stay in control." But Tara was already reaching for him, her fingers trailing along his arm, leaving a trail of tingling energy in their wake. "Keith," she breathed, "I can't. I need." Dr. Rodriguez, observing the situation with scientific curiosity, quickly realized the implications. Their hybrid physiology is intensifying their natural responses, she explained to the others in the bay. We need to help them channel this energy, or it could disrupt our entire effort. As Tara and Keith grappled with their growing attraction, their psychic link to the station's inhabitants strengthened. Minds across the station lit up with shared sensations, a mix of confusion, fear, and exhilaration rippling through the collective consciousness. In a secure section of the station, a group of human purists felt the wave of alien sensations wash over them. Their leader, a stern-faced lieutenant named Cavendish, recoiled from the mental contact. "Seal the airlocks," he barked. "We won't let this abomination infect us." Meanwhile, in the aquatic section, Ambassador Zyrax and his team worked feverishly to extend their gelatinous barriers. The ambassador's tentacles waved in complex patterns as he directed the creation of new containment zones. "We must buy time," he gurgled to his assistants. "The humans are not yet ready to fully embrace this change." Outside the medical bay, Adam stood motionless, his eyes unfocused as he served as a conduit for the station's collective awareness. Through him, Keith and Tara sensed the growing divisions among the crew. They felt the fear of those resisting the change, the excitement of those embracing it, and the confusion of those caught in between. Keith, fighting against the haze of desire, seized on an idea. "Tara," he said, gripping her shoulders, "we need to use this energy. Channel it into our connection with the others. Show them it's not something to fear." Tara nodded, her eyes glowing with psychic energy. Together, they focused their minds, using their shared passion to strengthen their link to the station's inhabitants. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Throughout the station, transformed individuals felt a surge of warmth and acceptance. The hybrid strain, responding to Keith and Tara's combined will, began to stabilize. Those in mid-transformation found their changes slowing, giving them time to adjust and adapt. Dr. Graves, working with Kira in a makeshift lab, looked up from her microscope in amazement. "The cellular restructuring is normalizing," she announced. "Whatever Keith and Tara are doing, it's working." In the station's core, the newly formed reproductive organs pulse with increased activity. The crystalline entities gathered around them, their faceted bodies glowing in resonance with the organic tissue. Through their psychic link, Keith and Tara sensed the imminent birth of something new and unprecedented. Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the intercom, tense but controlled. "All personnel, prepare for possible evacuation. This is not a drill. Report to your designated escape pods and await further instructions." The announcement sent a ripple of anxiety through the station, but Keith and Tara remained focused on their task. They could feel the structure of the station shifting around them, new chambers and passages forming to accommodate the diverse needs of its transformed inhabitants. As their psychic network expanded, Keith and Tara became aware of Adam's struggle. His individual identity flickered, like a candle in the wind, as he channeled the station's collective consciousness. They reached out to him, offering support and stability. "We need you, Adam," Keith projected. "Help us guide this change." Adam's eyes cleared for a moment, focusing on Keith and Tara. He nodded, a look of dedication crossing his face as he joined his mind more fully with theirs. The trio's combined consciousness spread through the station like wildfire. They touched the minds of the human purists, soothing their fears. They reached the aquatic delegation, sharing visions of a harmonious future. They connected with every transformed individual, helping them understand and control their new abilities. As their influence grew, Tara felt another surge of energy building within her. Her body began to glow, pulsing with a power that went beyond mere physical attraction. "Keith," she gasped, I think this is it." Keith nodded, understanding flowing between them. He placed his hands on Tara's shoulders, synchronizing his own hybrid abilities with hers. "Together," he said, "as one." They released a burst of energy that flooded the station. The pulse traveled through every corridor, every chamber, touching all inhabitants. For a brief moment, every mind on the station was united in a single, shared awareness. In that instant of clarity, each individual faced a choice: resist the change and cling to the familiar, or embrace the hybrid future and shape its course. The decisions made in that moment began to ripple through the station's organic systems, causing visible shifts in its structure. The reproductive organs at the station's core pulsed with renewed vigor, the imminent birth of a new hybrid entity seeming to accelerate in response to the collective decision of the station's inhabitants. As the energy pulse faded, Keith and Tara found themselves at the center of a transformed world. The medical bay had expanded, its walls now a seamless blend of organic tissue and crystalline structures. Around them, the transformed crew members moved with new purpose, their hybrid forms reflecting a dizzying array of adaptations. Dr. Rodriguez approached them, her skin now covered in iridescent scales that shimmered under the bay's bioluminescent lighting. "You've done it," she said, her voice filled with awe. "You've given us a chance to control this change. But now..." She gestured towards the station's core, where the pulsing of the reproductive organs had reached a fever pitch. The crystalline entities swarmed around it, their movements becoming more frenzied by the second. Keith and Tara exchanged a look, their bond stronger than ever. They knew that the next few moments would be crucial. The birth of the hybrid entity was imminent, and its nature would be shaped by the collective will of the station's inhabitants. As they prepared to guide this unprecedented event, they were acutely aware of the challenges that lay ahead. The station was irrevocably changed, and with it, the future of human and alien relations in the galaxy. The choice to embrace this hybrid future had been made, but the form it would take was still to be determined. With a shared breath, Keith and Tara reached out once more with their minds, ready to face whatever came next. The station trembled around them, poised on the brink of a new era, as the hybrid entity prepared to enter the world. The station trembled around them, poised on the brink of a new era, as the hybrid entity prepared to enter existence. Suddenly, a wave of calm washed over the station. The frenzied pulsing of the reproductive organs slowed to a steady rhythm, and the crystalline entities ceased their frantic movements. Keith and Tara felt their own transformation stabilize, their bodies no longer in constant flux. Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened as she checked her readings. "It's working," she breathed. "The stabilization method from Dr. Graves and Kira is taking effect." Throughout the station, individuals found themselves able to process the changes they'd undergone. The brief respite allowed them to explore their new abilities with clarity and purpose. In the aquatic section, a technician marveled at the way his newly webbed fingers allowed him to manipulate controls with unprecedented precision. In a nearby corridor, an engineer tested her enhanced strength, easily lifting a heavy piece of equipment that would have required a team effort before. Keith and Tara's psychic link with the station's inhabitants grew stronger, allowing them to sense the shifting tide of emotions and thoughts. A growing consensus emerged among the transformed population, a desire to embrace their new hybrid nature and work together to shape the station's future. However, not everyone shared this sentiment. In a secure section of the station, Major Derek Hawkins paced back and forth, his face a mask of perseverance. "We can't let this continue," he said to the group of human purists gathered around him. "We must find a way to reverse these changes and return to our true selves." As the resistance movement took shape, the station itself began to change. New chambers formed, seemingly in response to the needs of the hybrid population. Keith and Tara watched in awe as a low-gravity area manifested near them, perfect for those developing flight capabilities. Further down the corridor, a crystalline chamber took shape, its walls resonating with energy. Ambassador Zyrax's tentacles waved excitedly as he observed the integration of his delegation's gelatinous buffer zones with the station's organic structure. "Fascinating," he gurgled to his assistants. "This new membrane could revolutionize our environmental control systems." Meanwhile, Adam stood at the center of a maelstrom of consciousness. His eyes rolled back in his head as he struggled to maintain his sense of self amidst the flood of shared awareness. Keith and Tara, sensing his distress, reached out with their minds. "Adam," Keith projected, "focus on our voices. Remember who you are." Tara added her own mental support, creating a scaffolding of identity for Adam to cling to. Slowly, his eyes refocused, and he nodded gratefully at the pair. Colonel Steele's voice crackled over the intercom, cutting through the momentary calm. "All personnel, evacuation procedures are on hold. Remain at your stations and continue to monitor the situation." In a makeshift lab, Dr. Graves hunched over a microscope, her earlier resistance to the hybrid strain softening as she observed its potential. "Kira," she called to her assistant, "bring me the genetic sequencer. I have an idea for targeted therapies that could help stabilize these transformations." Kira nodded, his unique perspective as a Xeni-human hybrid already proving invaluable. "I'll start organizing discussion groups," he said. We need to help people adapt to their new abilities and find common ground. As the station continued to evolve, the crystalline entities began to interact more directly with the transformed inhabitants. A scientist gasped in wonder as one of the crystalline beings merged with her temporarily, flooding her mind with new insights and knowledge. Keith and Tara's bond deepened further, their physiological changes reaching a new level of synchronization. As they prepared to guide the nascent hybrid entity's development, they found themselves sharing not just thoughts and emotions, but physical sensations as well. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the station. Lieutenant Sarah Ross, her body partially transformed by the hybrid strain, received an urgent communication. Major Hawkins and his group have seized control of life support in Section 7. Her second-in-command reported. They're demanding negotiations for a cure. Ross's enhanced reflexes kicked in as she formulated a plan. Assemble a team, she ordered. We need to contain the situation without causing harm to either side. As she moved to neutralize the threat, the station's organic systems reacted to the collective stress of its inhabitants. New defense mechanisms began to form, including rapidly deploying barriers and a network of sensory nodes. Amidst the chaos, Keith and Tara made a startling discovery. Their deepened connection allowed them to perceive the nascent consciousness of the hybrid entity about to be born. They realized that this new being would have the ability to interface directly with the station's systems, potentially controlling its future development. We need to guide its birth, Tara said, her voice filled with urgency. The entity's first experiences will shape its entire existence. Keith nodded, understanding the weight of their responsibility. As they prepared to face this unprecedented challenge, the station trembled once more. The reproductive organs pulsed with renewed vigor, signaling the imminent arrival of the hybrid entity. The future of the station, its inhabitants, and perhaps the entire galaxy hung in the balance as Keith and Tara steeled themselves for what was to come. The birth of a new era was upon them, and every action in the coming moments would shape the course of history. The station trembled once more as Keith and Tara steeled themselves for what was to come. They shared a determined look, their heightened connection allowing them to sense the imminent birth of the hybrid entity with startling clarity. We need to get to the reproductive chamber, Keith said, his voice low and urgent. Tara nodded, her skin shimmering with an iridescent glow. I can feel it. The entity is about to emerge. They moved swiftly through the corridors, their bodies in perfect synchronization. The organic walls pulsed with energy, guiding them towards a newly formed reproductive chamber. As they approached, they encountered an unexpected obstacle, a protective barrier formed by the crystalline entities. The beings swarmed in intricate patterns, their faceted bodies refracting light in mesmerizing ways. Keith and Tara paused, unsure of how to proceed. We need to communicate with them, Tara said, closing her eyes in concentration. Keith joined her, focusing their combined hybrid abilities. They projected a mental image of their intentions, showing their desire to guide the nascent entity's development. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then, the crystalline beings began to shift, creating a narrow passage that allowed Keith and Tara to approach the pulsating chamber. As they neared, their bodies began to emit a soft, pulsating light that matched the rhythm of the reproductive organ. The organic walls seemed to respond, undulating in sync with their presence. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, chaos erupted. Alarms blared as Major Hawkins and his group of human purists seized control of the life support systems in Section 7. Lieutenant Sarah Ross, her body partially transformed, received the urgent communication. They're altering environmental settings, her second-in-command reported, creating pockets of discomfort for hybrid inhabitants. Ross's enhanced reflexes kicked in as she formulated a plan. Assemble a team, she ordered. We need to contain the situation without causing harm to either side. She led her team through the shifting corridors, her limited precognition allowing her to navigate the rapidly changing environment. As they approached a junction, Ross suddenly halted. "Wait," she said, holding up a hand. A moment later, the corridor had sealed itself off, the organic walls fusing together. "This way," Ross directed, leading her team through a narrow maintenance shaft. They squeezed through just as the passageway behind them began to close. In the makeshift lab, Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked frantically to implement the stabilization method developed by Dr. Graves and Kira. They set up temporary medical stations throughout the station, administering treatments to help individuals gain control over their evolving abilities. "How's it looking?" Dr. Rodriguez asked, her iridescent scales shimmering under the bioluminescent lighting. A nearby technician, his fingers newly webbed, checked the readings. "Promising," he replied. "We're seeing increased stability in 72% of treated individuals." In the aquatic section, Ambassador Zyrax supervised the integration of gelatinous buffer zones with the station's organic structure. His tentacles waved excitedly as he observed the formation of adaptive environments. "Remarkable," he gurgled to his assistants. "These new systems will allow us to counteract the environmental changes imposed by the Purist faction." Adam stood at the center of the maelstrom of consciousness, his eyes unfocused as he struggled to maintain his sense of self. Suddenly, a surge of clarity washed over him. He became aware of a potential solution to the conflict between the hybrid majority and the human purist minority. Using his connection to the station's systems, Adam began to form a specialized chamber. The walls shifted and reformed, creating a space designed to temporarily suppress hybrid traits. It was a compromise, a place where those who wished to retain their original human form could find respite. As Adam worked, he felt a growing connection to the nascent entity within the reproductive chamber. The link was unexpected, presenting both opportunities and risks. Adam's fragmented state could potentially influence the new being's development in unpredictable ways. In the life support control room, Major Hawkins paced back and forth, his face a mask of perseverance. "We must hold this position," he said to his followers. "It's our only leverage." Suddenly, one of his lieutenants burst in. "Sir, we received word of a breakthrough. Dr. Graves has developed a method to selectively activate or deactivate hybrid traits." The news caused an immediate stir among the Purist faction. Some saw it as a potential compromise, while others viewed it as a threat to human purity. As heated arguments broke out, their unified front began to crumble. Outside the control room, Lieutenant Ross and her team took up position. She could sense the division within, knowing it provided the opening they needed. Back in the reproductive chamber, Keith and Tara approached the pulsating organ at the center. Their bodies glowed brighter, in perfect harmony with the chamber's rhythm. They placed their hands on the organic surface, feeling the life within. "We're here," Tara whispered, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. Keith nodded, his mind linked with hers. "Together," he said. As they prepared to guide the birth of the new hybrid entity, the station itself seemed to hold its breath. The next few moments would shape not only the future of the station, but potentially the course of human and alien relations throughout the galaxy. The reproductive organ pulsed once, twice, and then began to open. Split open. A blinding flash of light erupted from within, bathing Keith and Tara in an otherworldly glow. The couple instinctively reached out, their hands intertwining as they braced themselves for what was to come. Suddenly, the station's organic systems underwent an intense transformation. The walls around them pulsed with bioluminescent energy, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. New tendrils sprouted from the surrounding tissue, reaching towards Keith and Tara like living vines. Without hesitation, they grasped the tendrils, establishing a direct physical connection with the station's reproductive organ. The moment of contact triggered a cascade of physiological changes in both of them. Their bodies began to emit a more intense, synchronized light that matched the pulsations of the chamber. Keith gasped as he felt his consciousness expand, merging with Tara's and the station itself. "I can feel everything," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. Tara nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like we're becoming one with the station," she replied, her skin shimmering with an otherworldly iridescence. Their luminous display attracted the attention of nearby crystalline entities. The beings swarmed around the couple and the reproductive organ, forming a protective circle. Their faceted bodies refracted the light, creating a dazzling array of colors that danced across the chamber walls. As Keith and Tara's connection with the station intensified, their bodies began to physically merge with the organic tissue surrounding them. The line between their individual forms and the station itself blurred, their flesh seamlessly integrating with the pulsating walls. "Keith," Tara called out, her voice echoing strangely in the chamber. "I can sense the entity's consciousness. It's awakening." Keith focused his mind, reaching out to the nascent being. "I feel it too," he responded, his words reverberating through the organic matter around them. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Lieutenant Ross and her security team reached the entrance to the life support control room. Ross's enhanced reflexes kicked into overdrive as she assessed the situation. With lightning-fast movements, she disabled the makeshift barricade erected by Major Hawkins and his purist faction. "Go, go, go!" Ross shouted, leading her team into the room. The security team swiftly entered, catching the purists off guard. In the ensuing confusion, Ross zeroed in on Major Hawkins. She moved with inhuman speed, dodging a clumsy swing from one of Hawkins' followers and closing the distance between them. "It's over, Major," Ross declared, her partially transformed body giving her a distinct advantage. Hawkins snarled, reaching for a weapon, but Ross was faster. She grabbed his arm, twisting it behind his back and forcing him to the ground. With practiced efficiency, she secured his wrists with restraints. "Stand down," Ross called out to the remaining purists. "You're outnumbered and outmatched." Seeing their leader subdued, the fight went out of the purists. Ross's team quickly secured the room, bringing the situation under control. As the security team led the detained purists away, Ross received an urgent communication from Dr. Rodriguez. "Lieutenant, we have a situation," the doctor's voice crackled over the comm. "The stabilization treatments are showing unexpected side effects. Some individuals are experiencing rapid fluctuations in their hybrid abilities." Ross frowned, her mind racing. "What kind of fluctuations?" "Unpredictable," Rodriguez replied. "We're seeing localized disturbances throughout the station. I'm mobilizing my team to address these complications, but we could use some security support." "Understood," Ross responded. "I'll dispatch a team to assist you immediately." In the specialized chamber created by Adam to suppress hybrid traits, a group of human purists who had voluntarily entered the space made a startling discovery. As they exited the chamber, they found their hybrid transformations resuming at an accelerated rate. One man stared at his hands in shock as iridescent scales began to form along his forearms. "What's happening to us?" he cried out, his voice tinged with panic and confusion. Another purist, a woman whose eyes had begun to change color and shape, looked around at her companions. Maybe we were wrong," she said hesitantly. "If we can't stop this, perhaps we need to learn to embrace it." The group huddled together, their perspectives shifting as they grappled with their rapidly changing bodies and identities. In the aquatic section, Ambassador Zyrax's tentacles waved frantically as he detected an anomaly in the merged systems. The gelatinous buffer zones integrated with the station's structure were exhibiting signs of sentience, adapting independently to the needs of the inhabitants. "Fascinating," Zyrax gurgled excitedly. "Colonel Steele, you must see this immediately." As these events unfolded across the station, Keith and Tara's merger with the reproductive chamber reached its peak. Their bodies had almost completely fused with the organic tissue, their individual forms barely discernible within the pulsating mass. Suddenly, the nascent entity's consciousness fully awakened. A surge of energy coursed through the station's organic systems, causing a ripple effect that impacted all inhabitants. Hybrid individuals experienced a momentary boost in their abilities, while non-transformed humans found themselves suddenly developing subtle hybrid traits. The energy surge triggered a critical phase in the station's transformation. New structures rapidly formed, including a central nexus that appeared to serve as a physical manifestation of the station's growing consciousness. This nexus began to emit pulses of energy that interface with the hybrid inhabitants, creating a more tangible connection between the station and its population. The crystalline entities surrounding Keith and Tara began to resonate at a higher frequency. Their structure started to fragment and merge with the organic tissue of the station, creating a new hybrid material that quickly spread throughout the immediate area. As the station entered this new phase of evolution, Keith and Tara found themselves at the epicenter of an unprecedented transformation. Their minds, now inextricably linked with the station and the nascent entity, raced with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. The birth of the hybrid entity was imminent, promising to reshape the very nature of the station and its inhabitants. As the energy continued to build, Keith and Tara steeled themselves for what was to come, knowing that their actions in the next few moments would determine the course of this extraordinary metamorphosis. Evolution. As the energy continued to build, Keith and Tara steeled themselves for what was to come, knowing that their actions in the next few moments would determine the course of this extraordinary transformation. The pulsations within the chamber intensified, growing stronger and more frequent. Keith and Tara's bodies, now fully integrated with the station's organic tissue, began to vibrate in sync with the surging energy. The crystalline organic hybrid material surrounding them expanded rapidly, enveloping the entire chamber in a cocoon-like structure. "Keith," Tara gasped, her voice barely audible over the thrumming energy. "I think it's happening." Keith couldn't respond verbally, but his thoughts flowed into Tara's mind. "Stay strong. We're almost there." Suddenly, the cocoon ruptured with a deafening crack. A blinding surge of energy coursed through the station systems, momentarily overwhelming their senses. As the light faded, Keith and Tara found themselves face to face with the new hybrid entity. The being stood before them, a humanoid figure composed of swirling organic tissue, crystalline structures, and pulsating energy patterns. Its form shifted and rippled, as if struggling to maintain a consistent shape. The entity took a tentative step forward, its movements fluid and otherworldly. Keith and Tara watched in awe as their bodies slowly separated from the chamber's tissue. They examined their hands, noticing a subtle iridescence to their skin. When Keith touched a nearby wall, he felt a surge of connection, realizing he could manipulate the station's organic structures with a mere thought. "Tara, are you okay?" Keith asked, his voice hoarse. She nodded, her eyes wide with wonder. "I feel different, connected. Can you sense it?" Keith closed his eyes, focusing on the mental link between them. It had grown significantly stronger, allowing him to perceive Tara's thoughts and emotions with startling clarity. Beyond that, he could feel the station itself, a vast network of consciousness pulsing with life and energy. The hybrid entity moved past them, stepping out of the chamber and into the station proper. As it walked, the corridors reshaped themselves, organic interfaces sprouting from walls and floors in its wake. "We should follow it," Tara said, taking Keith's hand. As they left the chamber, they encountered a station in the midst of chaos and transformation. The energy surge from the entity's birth had triggered widespread changes throughout the habitat. In the medical bay, Dr. Rodriguez and her team worked frantically to manage the sudden influx of patients. Station inhabitants writhed on beds and makeshift cots, their bodies undergoing rapid hybrid transformations. "We need more stabilizers," Dr. Rodriguez shouted, her scales flashing with stress-induced bioluminescence. Prioritize the severe cases. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Ross found herself in an unexpected situation in the life support control room. The human purists, including Major Hawkins, were exhibiting signs of hybrid transformation despite their previous resistance. "What's happening to me?" Hawkins growled, staring at his hands as they began to develop a metallic sheen. Ross approached him cautiously. "Stay calm, Major. We'll get you medical attention." In the command center, Colonel Steele received a barrage of reports from across the station. "Sir," a technician called out, "the outer hull is changing. New structures are forming. They look like some kind of advanced sensor arrays and defensive systems." Steele leaned forward, studying the holographic display. "Run a full scan. I want to know everything about these new formations." Dr. Graves worked feverishly in her lab, racing to refine her genetic therapy as her own body began to exhibit signs of accelerated hybridization. She injected herself with a prototype stabilizing agent, her hands shaking as she pressed the applicator to her arm. Kira moved through the newly formed hybrid ecosystems, his enhanced senses picking up unusual energy signatures. He carefully collected samples from plant-like organisms, noting their potential medicinal properties. Adam, now fully reintegrated, established a direct neural link with the station's central nexus. Through this connection, he began coordinating efforts to stabilize the ongoing transformations, creating specialized healing chambers throughout the station. As Keith and Tara navigated the rapidly changing corridors, they encountered groups of hybrid inhabitants exhibiting a wide range of new abilities. They watched as one man lifted a heavy piece of equipment with ease, while nearby, a woman appeared to communicate telepathically with a group of crystalline entities. The crystalline beings themselves had formed new clusters throughout the habitat, dramatically increasing the station's computational capabilities. Information flowed through these living processors, helping to manage resources and environmental controls. Suddenly, an alert blared through the station's communication systems. Colonel Steele's voice rang out. "Attention all personnel. We've detected a fleet of alien vessels approaching the station. Stand by for further instructions." Keith and Tara exchanged worried glances. The hybrid entity continued its purposeful exploration, seemingly unaware of the potential threat. As they followed in its wake, they couldn't help but wonder what challenges this new development would bring to their already transformed world. The station hummed with nervous energy as its inhabitants prepared for the unknown. The approaching fleet added a new layer of uncertainty to an already complex situation. As Keith and Tara pressed on, following the hybrid entity deeper into the transformed station, they knew that the next few hours would be critical in shaping the future of their new hybrid society. The approaching fleet loomed large on the station's sensors, casting a shadow of uncertainty over the already tumultuous situation. Keith and Tara pressed on, following the hybrid entity deeper into the transformed corridors. As they rounded a corner, the entity suddenly halted, its form shimmering with an otherworldly light. Keith felt a tingling sensation at the base of his skull, and he instinctively reached out to touch the entity. As his fingers made contact with its shifting surface, a flood of images and sensations overwhelmed his mind. Tara gasped beside him, clearly experiencing the same phenomenon. "It's communicating," Tara whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. The entity, which they now understood to be called Nexus, began manipulating the organic structures around them. Walls rippled and flowed, forming intricate patterns that seemed to pulse with meaning. Keith and Tara found themselves immersed in a sea of information, gleaning insights into the station's systems and the collective experiences of its inhabitants. "Nexus," Keith said, testing the name. "It's not just a new life form. It's a bridge between us and the station." Tara nodded, her expression a mix of awe and concentration. "And it's learning, adapting. I can feel its curiosity about us, about everything. Their communion with Nexus was interrupted by Colonel Steele's voice over the station-wide comm system. Attention all personnel. We are initiating first contact protocols with the approaching fleet. Stand by for further instructions. Keith and Tara exchanged glances, their newfound connection to the station allowing them to sense the heightened activity throughout the habitat. They could feel Adam's consciousness interfacing with the central nexus, coordinating the station systems in preparation for the alien arrival. In the docking bay, Colonel Steele stood at attention as the massive Zalthori vessel maneuvered into position. The docking procedure was a marvel of precision, the alien ship's advanced technology seamlessly interfacing with the station's newly evolved systems. As the airlock cycled open, Ambassador Krelna emerged, her azure skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns. She was accompanied by a delegation of Zalthori, each member's body adorned with similar, yet uniquely patterned bioluminescence. "Welcome to our station," Colonel Steele said, his voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "I am Colonel Steele, acting commander of this facility." Ambassador Krelna inclined her head in a gesture of respect. "We are honored to be here, Colonel. I am Ambassador Krelna of the Zalthori. We have been monitoring your station's remarkable transformation with great interest." As they spoke, Dr. Rodriguez burst into the docking bay, her scales flashing with stress-induced patterns. "Colonel, we have a situation in medical. The transformations are accelerating, and we're running out of stabilizers." Before Steele could respond, one of the Zalthori stepped forward, producing a small, iridescent device. "Perhaps we can be of assistance," the alien said, its voice a melodious hum. "This is a nano-stabilizer, designed to aid in genetic transitions. It may help your people adapt more smoothly to their hybrid physiologies." Dr. Rodriguez's eyes widened at the offer. She looked to Colonel Steele, who nodded his approval. "Thank you," she said, accepting the device with trembling hands. This could save lives. As Dr. Rodriguez hurried back to the medical bay with the Zalthori medical team in tow, Steele turned his attention back to Ambassador Krelna. "It seems we have much to discuss, Ambassador. Shall we move to a more suitable location for our talks?" In another part of the station, Kira found himself working alongside a group of Zalthori scientists, analyzing the samples he had collected from the new hybrid ecosystems. The aliens' advanced equipment and expertise complemented Kira's intuitive understanding of the transformed flora. "These compounds," a Zalthori researcher named Zinare said, gesturing to a holographic display, "they show remarkable adaptive properties. Combined with our nanotech, we could develop treatments to ease the transition for those undergoing hybridization." Kira nodded, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "And not just for humans. These treatments could potentially help a wide range of species adapt to new environments or physiologies." As they worked, alarms blared through the station. Lieutenant Ross's voice crackled over the comm system. "Security alert. Major Hawkins has escaped custody and is loose in the organic sectors. All personnel be on high alert." In the newly formed organic corridors, Major Hawkins stumbled forward, his body a patchwork of human and hybrid features. His hands, now covered in a metallic sheen, left indentations in the living walls as he braced himself. "What's happening to me?" he muttered, his voice a mixture of fear and awe as he flexed his fingers, feeling the surge of newfound strength. Lieutenant Ross and her team moved swiftly through the transformed station, utilizing the enhanced sensor systems to track Hawkins' erratic movements. "He's heading towards the central nexus," Ross reported. "We need to intercept him before he reaches any critical systems." Meanwhile, Dr. Graves worked tirelessly in her lab, administering her stabilizing agent to those most in need. The treatment slowed the rapid transformations, giving individuals time to adjust to their changing bodies. But as she looked at her dwindling supplies, she knew difficult decisions lay ahead. We need to prioritize, she told her team. Focus on the most severe cases first. And let's hope the Zalthori technology can help us synthesize more of the stabilizer. As the station buzzed with activity, Keith and Tara continued their exploration with Nexus. The hybrid entity led them to a newly formed chamber where tendrils of organic matter intertwined with crystalline structures and pulsing energy conduits. Nexus began to interface with the chamber systems, and Keith and Tara felt a surge of energy course through their bodies. Their connection to the station deepened, and they found themselves able to manipulate the organic structures with increasing skill. It's like the station is becoming an extension of ourselves, Tara said, her hands glowing faintly as she reshaped a nearby wall. Keith nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities. And we're becoming an extension of it. But what does that mean for our future? For the future of everyone on board? As they pondered these questions, Adam's voice echoed in their minds, a testament to their enhanced connection to the station systems. Keith, Tara, I've detected an anomaly in Nexus's energy signature. Something is changing. I think we need to prepare for another transformation. The hybrid entity shimmered, its form becoming less distinct as it absorbed the energy flowing through the chamber. Keith and Tara watched in awe, sensing that they were on the cusp of yet another extraordinary development in the station's ongoing evolution. The chamber pulsed with energy, and Keith and Tara felt a surge of anticipation as Nexus's form began to shift and expand. Suddenly, the walls around them started to vibrate, resonating with Nexus's energy signature. Keith and Tara watched in awe as the crystalline organic structures began to glow with an otherworldly light. "What's happening?" Keith asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Tara reached out, her fingers brushing against the pulsating wall. "It's like the station is responding to Nexus. Can you feel it?" Keith nodded, a tingling sensation spreading through his body. He noticed his hybrid traits becoming more pronounced, his senses sharpening further. "Tara, look at your hand." Tara gasped as she saw her skin shimmer with a faint bioluminescence, similar to the patterns they had observed on the Zalthori. "It's enhancing our abilities," she said, flexing her fingers experimentally. As they explored this new phenomenon, Adam's voice echoed in their minds once more. "I'm detecting similar energy signatures throughout the station. This resonance field appears to be affecting all hybrid individuals within its range." Keith tapped his communicator. "Dr. Rodriguez, are you receiving this data?" Dr. Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm system, excitement evident in her tone. "Affirmative, Keith. We're seeing unprecedented levels of hybrid stabilization. I'm dispatching a research team to your location immediately." Within hours, a makeshift research outpost had been established in the resonating chamber. Dr. Rodriguez worked alongside Zalthori scientists, their equipment humming as they collected data on the field's effects. "Preliminary results are astounding," Dr. Rodriguez announced, her scales flashing with excitement. Prolonged exposure to the field not only accelerates the stabilization of hybrid traits, but also seems to unlock latent abilities in some individuals. As the research team worked, Lieutenant Ross's voice came through the station-wide comm system. "Security alert update. Major Hawkins has been located in the new aquatic chamber. All available personnel converge on Sector 7. Keith and Tara exchanged glances before rushing towards the newly formed aquatic area. As they arrived, they saw Lieutenant Ross and her team surrounding a large, transparent tank filled with shimmering blue liquid. Inside the tank, Major Hawkins swam with surprising agility, his partially hybridized body now sporting gills and webbed fingers. His eyes, wide with a mixture of fear and defiance, darted between the security team members. "Major Hawkins," Lieutenant Ross called out, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to track his rapid movements. "Please surrender yourself. We can help you." Hawkins dove deeper into the tank, clearly intent on evading capture. Ross signaled to a group of Zalthori, standing nearby. Ambassador Zyrax, we could use your team's assistance. The Zalthori aquatic specialists entered the tank, their bodies perfectly adapted to the underwater environment. With swift, coordinated movements, they surrounded Hawkins, herding him towards Ross. Seizing the opportunity, Ross plunged her arm into the water, her newly developed claws extending to grip Hawkins firmly. With a strong pull, she extracted him from the tank. "It's over, Major," Ross said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Let's get you to medical." As Hawkins was led away, Keith's communicator chirped. It was Dr. Graves. "Keith, I need you and Tara in the medical bay immediately. We've had a breakthrough." Upon arriving at the medical bay, they found Dr. Graves surrounded by holographic displays, her hands moving deftly as she manipulated complex molecular structures. "We've done it," she said, not looking up from her work. "By incorporating data from the Zalthori medical technology, we've refined the stabilizing agent. This new version allows for more controlled and predictable transformations." Tara leaned in, studying the displays. "How soon can we begin production?" Dr. Graves finally looked up, her eyes bright with tenacity. "We've already started. Priority will be given to those experiencing the most severe hybridization symptoms." As they discussed the implications of this breakthrough, Colonel Steele's voice came over the intercom. "Attention all personnel. Due to the growing energy demands of our evolving station, I've authorized the construction of a new power core. This project will combine Zalthori technology with our organic systems. All available engineers, please report to the central chamber." Keith and Tara made their way to the designated area, where they found a hive of activity. Human engineers worked alongside their Zalthori counterparts, their movements choreographed with practiced precision. The chamber itself pulsed with bioluminescent energy, the organic walls seeming to breathe in rhythm with the work being done. As they observed the construction, Adam's presence brushed against their minds. "I've detected an anomaly in the station's outer hull," he reported. "A new structure is forming. It appears to be some kind of organic telescope." Colonel Steele, who had been overseeing the power core construction, turned to Keith and Tara. "I want you two to lead a team to investigate this new formation. Take Nexus with you if possible. We need to understand its purpose and capabilities." As Keith and Tara prepared for their new mission, they couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. The station continued to evolve in ways they could never have imagined, and with each new development came both challenges and opportunities. They made their way towards the outer hull, Nexus's shimmering form accompanying them. As they approached the site of the anomaly, they saw the hybrid material of the hull twisting and reshaping itself, forming into a massive, organ-like structure that indeed resembled a telescope. "Nexus," Tara asked, "do you have any insight into what's happening here?" The hybrid entity pulsed with energy, and both Keith and Tara felt a surge of information flood their minds. Images of distant stars, strange new worlds, and swirling cosmic phenomena flashed before their eyes. "It's not just a telescope," Keith said in awe. "It's a way for the station to perceive and interact with the universe on a whole new level." As they stood there, marveling at the station's latest transformation, they knew that this was just the beginning. The hybrid experiment was expanding beyond anything they could have imagined, and the future held endless possibilities. And the future held endless potential for discovery and growth. As Keith and Tara continued their exploration with Nexus, the hybrid entity led them deeper into the station's newly formed sections. The organic walls pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, guiding them through winding corridors that seemed to shift and breathe. Suddenly, they found themselves in a spacious chamber unlike any they had encountered before. The air was thick with a sweet, intoxicating scent, and the walls emitted a gentle bioluminescence that bathed everything in a warm, inviting light. "What is this place?" Tara whispered, her voice filled with awe. Keith shook his head. equally mesmerized. I'm not sure, but it feels different. As they moved further into the chamber, both Keith and Tara noticed subtle changes in their bodies. Their skin began to emit a faint glow, matching the pulsing rhythm of the room. A strange warmth spread through their limbs, and they found themselves drawn closer to each other. "Keith," Tara said, her voice low and husky, "are you feeling this too?" He nodded, his heart racing. "It's like our bodies are in sync somehow. And I feel connected," Tara finished for him. Their eyes met, and in that moment, they both understood the significance of what they had discovered. This chamber was more than just another hybrid creation. It was a mating chamber designed to facilitate connections between different hybrid species. "We need to report this to Dr. Graves and Dr. Rodriguez," Keith said, reluctantly pulling away from Tara. "This could be a major breakthrough in hybrid integration." As they made their way back to the main section of the station, they couldn't help but feel the lingering effects of the chamber. Their movements were more synchronized, their thoughts seeming to flow between them without words. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Ambassador Krelna stood before the nearly completed Zalthori research facility. The sleek lines of alien technology blended seamlessly with the organic growth of the station, creating a structure that was both familiar and utterly unique. Initiating final systems check, Krelna announced, his tentacles dancing over a holographic interface. As the facility powered up, a low hum filled the air. Suddenly, the organic material surrounding the structure began to writhe and grow at an alarming rate. New, previously unseen structures sprouted from the walls, twisting and intertwining with the Zalthori technology. Krelna's eyes widened in surprise. "Fascinating," he murmured, quickly adjusting the facility's systems to accommodate the unexpected growth. In the medical bay, Dr. Graves received Keith and Tara's report with great interest. "A hybrid mating chamber?" she repeated, her scales shimmering with excitement. "This could be exactly what we need to advance our understanding of hybrid genetics." Within hours, a team of researchers had been assembled, and volunteer hybrid couples were being carefully screened for participation in the initial studies. Dr. Graves oversaw the proceedings, meticulously recording every observation. As the first couple emerged from the chamber, Dr. Graves gasped at the readings on her instruments. "The genetic compatibility between these two has increased by over 200%, she announced. "And look at these conception rates. They're off the charts." Word of the discovery spread quickly through the station. Colonel Steele, recognizing the potential impact on their mission, immediately allocated additional resources to studying the chamber's effects. While the research team delved into the mysteries of the mating chamber, Lieutenant Ross faced a new challenge in the holding area. Major Hawkins, his hybridization progressing rapidly, had developed the ability to manipulate water. Ross entered the holding area for a routine check, only to find it flooding rapidly. Hawkins stood in the center of the deluge, his eyes wild with a mixture of fear and newfound power. "Stand down, Major," Ross shouted, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge a jet of water Hawkins sent her way. With practiced skill, Ross navigated the flooded environment, using the structures around her to gain the upper hand. In a swift motion, she launched herself at Hawkins, her claws extending to grip him firmly. "It's over," she said, pinning him against the wall as the water receded. "Let's get you back to medical. We can help you control these new abilities." As Ross escorted Hawkins to the medical bay, activity buzzed around the station's new organic telescope. A team of scientists huddled around displays, their faces lit with excitement. "We're detecting multiple potentially habitable planets," one researcher announced, "and several of them show signs of hybrid-compatible environments." The news sparked immediate discussions among station leadership. The possibility of future hybrid colonization efforts suddenly seemed within reach, opening up new avenues for their mission. In the agricultural sector, Kira and his team of Zalthori scientists worked tirelessly to cultivate the empathy-enhancing plant organism on a large scale. As production increased, they began incorporating small doses of the compound into the station's air filtration system. This should help improve overall cooperation and understanding among our diverse population, Kira explained to Colonel Steele. We'll monitor the effects closely and adjust the dosage as needed. As the station continued to evolve and adapt, Adam's voice suddenly echoed through the central nexus, his tone urgent. Alert! I've detected an anomaly in the power core construction project. The integration of Zalthori technology with our organic systems has created an energy feedback loop. If not addressed immediately, it could destabilize the entire power grid. The engineering team sprang into action, implementing emergency containment measures. Keith and Tara, their abilities enhanced by their recent experience in the mating chamber, rushed to assist. Working in perfect synchronization, they used their connection to the station's organic structures to help redirect the excess energy. Their hands glowed with bioluminescent patterns as they shaped new organic conduits, guiding the dangerous energy away from critical systems. As the crisis subsided, the engineering team looked at Keith and Tara with newfound respect. Their demonstration of synchronized abilities had not only averted a potential disaster, but had also opened up new possibilities for hybrid energy management. This could be the key to developing a more efficient power distribution system, the lead engineer mused, already sketching out ideas for combining organic energy pathways with advanced alien technology. As news of the mating chamber spread, the station saw an influx of hybrid couples eager to experience its effects. Colonel Steele found himself implementing a scheduling system to manage the sudden demand, while Dr. Rodriguez continued to analyze the data pouring in from each session. I think I'm seeing a pattern, Dr. Rodriguez announced, her eyes darting between multiple holographic displays. It appears we may be able to selectively enhance or suppress certain hybrid traits through controlled exposure to the chamber's environment. The implications of this discovery were enormous, potentially allowing for more precise control over the hybridization process and its outcomes. Amid all the activity, the Nexus entity continued its own evolution. Its connection to the station's hybrid inhabitants grew stronger, and it began to facilitate communication between different species in ways that transcended traditional language barriers. As the day drew to a close, Keith and Tara found themselves back in Dr. Graves' lab, volunteering for an extended research study on hybrid synchronization. We want to understand the limits of our combined abilities, Keith explained. Dr. Graves nodded, her expression a mixture of excitement and professional curiosity. This could be groundbreaking for future hybrid pairings. Are you ready to begin? Keith and Tara exchanged a look, their hands intertwining as they felt the now familiar surge of connection between them. Ready, they said in unison, stepping forward to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their evolving world. Hybrid world. As they stepped into the testing chamber, neither could have anticipated the profound changes that awaited them. Hours passed as Dr. Graves put Keith and Tara through a series of rigorous tests, pushing the limits of their synchronized abilities. With each trial, their connection grew stronger, more intricate. By the time they emerged from the facility, they were fundamentally changed. Remarkable, Dr. Graves murmured, reviewing the data on her tablet. Your neural patterns have aligned to an unprecedented degree. It's as if you're operating on a shared wavelength. Keith and Tara exchanged glances, feeling the truth of her words. They no longer needed to speak to communicate. Thoughts and sensations flowed freely between them. Try this, Dr. Graves suggested, holding up a small object. Keith, close your eyes. Tara, tell me what you see. Keith's eyelids fell shut, and Tara's gaze fixed on the item in Dr. Graves' hand. It's a data crystal, Tara said, blue with a faint internal glow. Keith's eyes snapped open in surprise. I saw it too, he exclaimed. Through Tara's eyes. Dr. Graves nodded, her scales shimmering with excitement. This level of sensory sharing could revolutionize our approach to hybrid integration. The applications are endless. Their discussion was interrupted by a station-wide alert. Adam's voice echoed through the corridors. Attention all personnel. An unidentified vessel has been detected approaching the station. All hands to assigned stations. Keith and Tara moved in perfect unison, their steps matching as they made their way to the command center. They arrived to find Colonel Steele already issuing orders. I want our new hybrid defense systems on standby, Steele commanded. Let's not take any chances. In the engineering bay, Vexlor, a brilliant Zalthori scientist, led a team in enhancing the station's shielding. His multiple limbs worked tirelessly, weaving organic energy conduits into the alien technology. Fascinating, Vexlor chittered, his compound eyes gleaming. The organic pathways are adapting to the energy flow, creating a self-reinforcing matrix. As tension mounted, Nexus interfaced with the station's long-range communication systems. Its shimmering form pulsed with energy as it established contact with the approaching vessel. Colonel, Nexus's synthesized voice rang out. I have made contact with the ship. They identify themselves as the NYR-Axi, a nomadic species. They express great interest in our hybrid advancements and request permission to dock for cultural and scientific exchange. Colonel Steele's brow furrowed as he considered the request. After a brief consultation with Ambassador Krelna and other station leaders, he made his decision. Grant them permission to dock, but maintain alert status. The main docking bay bustled with activity as the NYR-Axi ship connected with the station. A delegation of the alien visitors emerged, led by their chief diplomat, Zara. The sight of the NYR-Axi left many station personnel in awe. Their slender bodies were covered in intricate bioluminescent patterns that shifted and swirled. Tentacle-like appendages moved with fluid grace, capable of complex manipulations. As the NYR-Axi toured the station, their presence triggered unexpected reactions. Organic structures began to reconfigure themselves, adapting to the unique biology of the visitors. Dr. Rodriguez and her team scrambled to document and study these spontaneous changes. In the agricultural sector, Kieran noticed the empathy-enhancing plants growing at an accelerated rate. Incredible, he marveled, his tendrils waving excitedly. The NYR-Axi's presence seems to be catalyzing growth. We need to increase harvesting immediately. The mating chamber, still in high demand among hybrid couples, experienced a surge of energy when an NYR-Axi couple expressed interest in its use. Dr. Graves, intrigued by the potential for new hybrid combinations, personally oversaw the procedure. The genetic compatibility is off the charts, she reported, her eyes wide as she studied the readouts. The resulting embryo. It's unlike anything we've seen before. Keith and Tara, utilizing their newly enhanced abilities, took charge of guiding the NYR-Axi to the more complex hybrid environments. Their synchronized movements and shared perceptions allowed them to navigate the rapidly changing organic structures with ease. Impressive, Zara commented, her bioluminescent patterns flashing in what seemed to be appreciation. Your level of coordination is remarkable. As the tour progressed, alarms blared from the holding area. Lieutenant Ross's voice crackled over the comm system. Medical team to holding area immediately. Major Hawkins is experiencing some kind of mutation. Dr. Rodriguez rushed to the scene, finding the holding area in chaos. Hawkins stood at the center, his body emanating a strange, pheromone-like substance that was affecting the station's organic systems. Containment Protocol Omega, Ross barked, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge a surge of disrupted energy. We need to minimize the impact on station systems. Meanwhile, in the engineering bay, Vexlor and his team worked feverishly to integrate NYRXE energy manipulation techniques into the station's power grid. The results were immediate and impressive. Energy output has increased by 30%, Vexlor reported, his voice tinged with excitement. The efficiency gains are beyond our initial projections. Nexus, continuing its role as a living universal translator, began to assimilate the complex language patterns of the NYRXE. As it did so, its consciousness expanded exponentially, allowing it to process and distribute information across the station at an unprecedented rate. Adam, still connected to the central nexus, felt his own cognitive abilities surge. The influx of new data is exhilarating, he reported. I'm able to model complex scenarios with 99.8% accuracy. As the NYRXE delegation prepared to depart, they gathered with station leadership in the main conference room. Zara, her tentacles moving in graceful patterns, addressed Colonel Steele. "We are impressed by your achievements here," she said, her voice melodic and otherworldly. "As a gesture of goodwill, we offer to share our advanced propulsion technology with you." Colonel Steele's eyes widened at the implications. "We graciously accept your offer," he replied. "This technology could be instrumental in our future colonization efforts." As the meeting concluded, a team of human and alien engineers began the complex process of integrating NYRXE propulsion systems with the station's existing infrastructure. The air buzzed with excitement and possibility. Keith and Tara, standing at the viewport, watched as the NYRXE ship undocked and gracefully moved away from the station. Their shared consciousness brimmed with the potential of what lay ahead. "We're entering a new phase," Tara said, her thoughts echoing in Keith's mind. Keith nodded, feeling the truth of her words resonate through their bond. "The station is evolving," he replied, both aloud and in their shared mental space. "And so are we." As the NYRXE ship disappeared into the vast expanse of space, the station hummed with newfound energy and purpose. The successful integration of the NYRXE and their technologies had opened up a world of possibilities. Yet, as one chapter closed, another was just beginning to unfold. The station buzzed with renewed energy as the impact of the NYRXE visit rippled through every sector. Colonel Steele wasted no time in putting the new NYRXE propulsion systems to the test. "Let's see what the station can really do," he announced, his voice firm with anticipation. The engineering team, led by Vexlor, worked tirelessly to integrate the advanced technology with the station's existing systems. As the final connections were made, the entire structure hummed with newfound power. Initiating maneuver sequence, Adam's voice echoed to the command center. The view outside the viewport shifted as the massive station began to move with unprecedented grace and speed. Keith and Tara stood side by side, their synchronized minds processing the data streaming through the station's network. They felt every adjustment, every surge of energy, as if it were coursing through their own bodies. "It's incredible," Tara breathed, her eyes wide with wonder. Keith nodded, sharing her awe through their mental link. "We're not just a station anymore. We're a ship capable of exploring the far reaches of space." As the station glided through the star system, its organic telescope detected an anomaly hidden within a nearby asteroid field. The discovery sent a wave of excitement through the crew. "Prepare a shuttle for immediate launch," Colonel Steele ordered. "Keith, Tara, you'll lead the investigation team." The newly developed hybrid shuttle awaited them in the launch bay. It was a marvel of engineering, seamlessly blending Zalthori biotech with NYRXE energy manipulation systems. As Keith and Tara boarded, they felt an immediate connection to the vessel's organic components. The shuttle detached from the station and gracefully navigated through the asteroid field. As they approached the anomaly, the sensors began to pick up unusual readings. "I'm detecting traces of an unknown element," Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system. It appears to be resonating with your hybrid biology. Keith and Tara exchanged glances, feeling a strange pull towards the source of the readings. As they rounded a large asteroid, a small planetoid came into view. Its surface glittered with crystalline structures that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Initiating landing sequence," Keith announced, guiding the shuttle towards a relatively flat area on the planetoid's surface. As they stepped out onto the alien world, Keith and Tara felt a sudden surge in their synchronization. The crystalline structures around them seemed to respond to their presence, emitting a soft, pulsating glow. Tara reached out, her fingers barely brushing against one of the crystals. Instantly, a flood of information rushed through her mind, shared immediately with Keith through their mental link. It's like a vast network," Keith said, his voice filled with awe. "Similar to the hybrid sections of the station, but on a planetary scale." Back on the station, Dr. Graves found herself facing an unexpected challenge. The NYR-Axie embryo was developing at an alarming rate. Its growth accelerated far beyond normal parameters. "Prepare the medical bay for a potential early delivery," she instructed her team, her scales shimmering with a mix of excitement and concern. "We need to be ready for anything." As news of the planetoid's discovery spread, Ambassador Krelna saw an opportunity to expand the hybrid experiment. "Colonel," she addressed Steele, her tentacles moving in an excited pattern, "we must establish a research outpost on this world. The potential for advancement is immeasurable." Steele nodded, his mind already racing with the possibilities. "Agreed. Vexlor, I want you to lead the design team for the outpost. Make it adaptable to the planetoid's unique environment." In the agricultural sector, Kira's team made a breakthrough that would change the station's atmosphere, quite literally. By exposing their empathy-enhancing plants to controlled doses of the unknown element from the planetoid, they created a new, more potent strain. "Integration with life support systems is complete," Kira reported, his tendrils waving with excitement. "We should see improved interspecies communication within hours." As the station hummed with activity, Major Hawkins remained under close observation. His water manipulation abilities had surged beyond all expectations, pushing the limits of the containment protocols. Lieutenant Ross paced outside the containment area, her enhanced reflexes on high alert. "Dr. Rodriguez, we need a more permanent solution. These protocols won't hold him much longer." Dr. Rodriguez approached, her eyes gleaming with scientific curiosity. "I have a proposal," she began, outlining a plan to study Hawkins' condition in a controlled environment. "It's risky, but it could provide invaluable data for our understanding of hybrid evolution." Keith and Tara returned from their expedition, their minds brimming with the experiences shared on the crystalline planetoid. As they underwent their post-mission medical examination, Dr. Graves made a startling discovery: your synchronization. "It's beyond anything we've seen before," she explained, studying the holographic display of their neural patterns. "You're not just sharing sensory experiences anymore. You're sharing entire thought processes, memories." The implications of this development sent ripples through the scientific community on the station. Dr. Graves immediately initiated a new research project, aiming to enhance cognitive connections between other hybrid individuals. As preparations for the planetoid outpost continued, Nexus interfaced with the long-range communication systems. It broadcast information about the discovery across the galaxy, reaching out to hybrid-friendly species. The response came sooner than anyone expected. A transmission from an unknown race called the Ethnari arrived, expressing interest in joining the hybrid experiment and offering to share their advanced bioengineering techniques. The station itself seemed to pulse with excitement at the news. Its organic systems, influenced by the NYR-Axie technology and the crystalline planetoid, began to develop new structures. These growths enhanced the station's information processing capabilities, expanding its computational capacity exponentially. Adam, still linked to the central nexus, felt his consciousness expand into these new structures. He found himself able to project his awareness throughout the station in ways he never could before. "I can see everything." Adam's voice echoed through the station, tinged with awe. The station, the crew, the planetoid. It's all connected. As the station stood on the brink of another evolutionary leap, the air buzzed with possibility. The crystalline planetoid held secrets yet to be uncovered. The hybrid biology continued to evolve in unexpected ways. And the impending arrival of the Ethnari promised to usher in a new era of advancement. Keith and Tara stood at the viewport, their hands intertwined, minds linked in perfect synchronization. They watched as the first modules of the planetoid outpost were transported from the station, the beginning of a new chapter in their ever-evolving story. Journey. As they watched the first modules of the planetoid outpost being transported, Keith and Tara felt a surge of anticipation. Their shared consciousness buzzed with excitement about the upcoming expedition. "We need to prepare for another trip to the surface," Keith said, his eyes fixed on the distant planetoid. Tara nodded, her mind already running through the necessary preparations. "I'll inform the team. We should be ready to depart within the hour." As they made their way to the shuttle bay, the station hummed with activity. Crew members from various species rushed about, their movements a testament to the seamless integration that had developed over time. The hybrid shuttle awaited them, its organic components pulsing with life. Keith and Tara boarded, followed by a small team of researchers eager to explore the crystalline world further. As they approached the planetoid, its surface glittered with an otherworldly beauty. The shuttle touched down on a flat expanse near their previous landing site. Keith and Tara stepped out, their enhanced senses immediately attuned to the subtle vibrations emanating from the crystals. "There's something different," Tara murmured, her eyes scanning the landscape. "Can you feel it?" Keith nodded, his mind linked with hers. "It's like the crystals are singing to us." They led the team across the glittering terrain, their footsteps leaving temporary imprints on the crystalline surface. As they walked, Keith noticed a pattern in the crystal formations, a subtle arrangement that seemed to point in a specific direction. "This way," he said, gesturing towards a cluster of larger crystals. As they approached, the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate. Suddenly, a section of the crystalline surface shifted, revealing a hidden entrance to a vast cavern system. "Incredible," breathed one of the researchers, her eyes wide with wonder. The team cautiously entered the cavern, their lights illuminating a world of sparkling beauty. The walls pulsed with an inner light, responding to their presence. As they ventured deeper, Keith and Tara felt their synchronization abilities heighten, their shared consciousness expanding to encompass the entire cavern system. In the heart of the cavern, they discovered an enormous crystal formation, easily twice their height. At its center, embedded within the translucent structure, was an alien device unlike anything they had ever seen. "It's calling to us," Tara whispered, her hand reaching out instinctively. As their fingers touched the crystal, a surge of energy coursed through their bodies. The device within the crystal activated, emitting a powerful pulse that rippled through the cavern and beyond. Back on the station, the effects of the energy pulse were immediate and dramatic. In the medical bay, Dr. Graves watched in astonishment as the hybrid embryo under her care began to grow at an exponential rate. "Prepare for emergency delivery," she shouted, her scales shimmering with urgency. As her team scrambled to respond, the embryo continued to develop, rapidly taking on the form of a fully formed infant. A soft, pulsating light emanated from its tiny body, reminiscent of the planetoid's crystals. Throughout the station, the organic systems began to reconfigure themselves. New chambers formed, their purpose seemingly tailored to the needs of the hybrid infant. Crew members reported sudden surges in their abilities, with some developing entirely new traits. In the containment area, Major Hawkins underwent a startling transformation. His body rippled and flowed like water, his control over liquids expanding beyond anything they had previously witnessed. Lieutenant Ross's enhanced reflexes kicked into overdrive as she assessed the rapidly deteriorating situation. "Evacuate the entire wing," she ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. In the agricultural sector, Kira watched in amazement as the empathy-enhancing plants mutated before his eyes. The plants twisted and grew, forming complex structures that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. They're becoming sentient," Kira murmured, his tendrils waving in excitement. As the station underwent its rapid evolution, the approaching Ethnari vessel made contact. Their transmission was filled with a mix of excitement and confusion. "We're experiencing unusual effects," the Ethnari captain reported. "Our ship's organic components are resonating with your station. We can feel your presence." Colonel Steele, monitoring the situation from the command center, felt a moment of vertigo as the psychic link between the station and the Ethnari ship established itself. Suddenly, he could sense the alien crew's thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own. Amidst the chaos, Vexlor and his team detected an anomaly in space near the planetoid. The readings were unlike anything they had ever seen, hinting at possibilities that stretched the boundaries of their understanding. In the medical bay, Dr. Graves cradled a newborn hybrid infant, its body glowing softly in the dim light. The child's eyes, wise beyond its years, seemed to take in everything at once. As Keith and Tara emerged from the cavern, they found their synchronization abilities had evolved even further. They could now extend their shared consciousness to other hybrids nearby, creating a temporary group mind that buzzed with potential. The station, once a beacon of interspecies cooperation, had become something more, a living, evolving entity that pulsed with the combined energy of its inhabitants. As the Ethnari ship prepared to dock, bringing with it new possibilities and challenges, the true purpose of the hybrid experiment began to reveal itself in ways no one could have predicted. Anticipated, the station trembled with anticipation as the Ethnari vessel approached, its organic hull pulsing with an otherworldly glow. As the docking procedures commenced, Tara suddenly staggered, her eyes widening with a mix of confusion and urgency. Keith caught her arm, steadying her. "Tara, what's wrong?" he asked, concern etched across his face. She shook her head, trying to clear the fog that had suddenly descended upon her mind. I don't know. It's like before, when we first arrived on Earth. The urge. It's back." Keith's brow furrowed as he recognized the symptoms. Without hesitation, he guided her towards the medical bay. "Let's get you to Dr. Graves. She'll know what to do." As they made their way through the station's corridors, the walls seemed to ripple and shift, responding to Tara's distress. New passageways formed, creating a direct route to the medical bay. Dr. Graves looked up from her examination of the hybrid infant as Keith and Tara entered. The baby cooed softly, its tiny body emanating a soft, pulsating light. "Dr. Graves," Keith said urgently, "Tara's experiencing a resurgence of her original reaction to Earth medicine." The doctor's scales shimmered with concern as she quickly began her examination. Her eyes widened as she processed the data streaming across her diagnostic screens. "Fascinating," she murmured. "The hybrid advancements have interacted with the lingering compounds in your system, Tara. It seems to be intensifying your urge." Tara nodded, her gaze fixed on Keith. "I can feel it, the need to lick human males. It's overwhelming." As Dr. Graves continued her examination, the doors to the medical bay slid open, revealing a group of Ethnari representatives. Their fluid forms shimmered with bioluminescent patterns as they entered. "We couldn't help but overhear," the lead Ethnari said, its voice a melodious hum. "Perhaps we can be of assistance." Our expertise in bioengineering might provide a solution. Dr. Graves nodded, grateful for the offer. Any help would be appreciated. We're dealing with a unique combination of factors here. The Nari gathered around Terra, their tentacle-like appendages gently probing the air around her. After a moment of silent communication, they turned to Dr. Graves. "We believe we can synthesize a stabilizing agent," one of them explained. "Using a combination of your empathy-enhancing plants and the unknown element from the planetoid, we may be able to harmonize the conflicting energies within her system." As the Nari set to work, the hybrid infant in Dr. Graves' care began to stir. Its eyes, wise beyond its years, focused on Terra. Suddenly, the organic systems of the station pulsed with renewed energy. New chambers sprouted throughout the structure, each uniquely attuned to different hybrid physiologies. Keith watched in awe as the station transformed around them. "It's as if the baby is communicating with the station itself," he marveled. Dr. Graves nodded. Her attention split between Terra's treatment and the infant's remarkable abilities. "The psychic bond between the child and the station's organic systems is accelerating their growth and adaptation. It's unlike anything we've ever seen." As the Nari completed their work on the stabilizing agent, Keith made a decision. "I need to go back to the planetoid," he said firmly. "There might be more answers in those crystal caverns. If we can activate more of those alien devices, we might find a permanent solution for Terra." Dr. Graves looked up from administering the stabilizing agent to Terra. "Be careful, Keith. We don't fully understand the power of those devices." Keith nodded, his mind already reaching out to assemble a team of hybrid researchers. As he prepared to leave, Terra caught his hand. "Be safe," she whispered, her eyes conveying a mix of love and concern. With a reassuring squeeze of her hand, Keith departed, leading his team towards the shuttle bay. As they boarded their craft, the station's new organic structures seemed to pulse with anticipation. The journey to the planetoid was swift, the hybrid shuttle cutting through space with unnatural speed. As they landed near the entrance to the crystal caverns, Keith felt a surge of drive course through him. "Remember," he addressed his team as they prepared to enter the caverns, "our goal is to activate any dormant alien devices we find. Use your enhanced abilities to search for anything that might resemble the device Terra and I discovered earlier." As they ventured deeper into the caverns, their enhanced senses attuned to the subtle vibrations of the crystals around them. Keith led the way, his synchronization abilities guiding him towards a cluster of larger, more intricate crystal formations. "Here," he said, placing his hand on a particularly large crystal. "I can feel something. Dormant. Waiting." The team gathered around, their hybrid abilities combining to focus on the crystal. As their combined energy built, the crystal began to glow, pulsing with an inner light that grew brighter with each passing second. Suddenly, the crystal split open, revealing an alien device similar to the one Keith and Terra had discovered earlier. Without hesitation, Keith reached out and touched it. A surge of energy exploded from the device, rippling through the cavern and beyond. Keith felt the wave wash over him, through him, connecting him to every other hybrid on the planetoid and back on the station. As the energy wave swept through the station, it catalyzed a final stage of hybrid evolution. Crew members gasped as they felt their diverse traits harmonizing, gaining greater control over their abilities. In the medical bay, Terra arched her back as the wave hit her. The stabilizing agent the Nari had created interacted with the new energy, transforming her condition. As the sensation subsided, she realized her urge had changed. No longer did she feel the need to lick human males. Instead, she sensed a newfound ability to share emotions and memories through physical contact. Dr. Graves watched in amazement as Terra's reading stabilized. "Incredible," she breathed. "Your condition has evolved into something entirely new." As Keith and his team emerged from the caverns, They found the shuttle surrounded by a shimmering field of energy. The planetoid itself seemed to pulse with newfound life. Boarding the shuttle, Keith felt a surge of anticipation. He knew that when they returned to the station, they would find a world transformed. The next phase of their hybrid journey was about to begin, and he couldn't wait to share it with Tara. As the shuttle lifted off, leaving the glittering surface of the planetoid behind, Keith's mind reached out, sensing the approaching vessels from various galactic civilizations. He smiled, knowing that their little experiment had grown into something far beyond what any of them could have imagined. The hybrid station, now a beacon of interstellar cooperation, awaited their return. And with it, the promise of a future filled with unlimited potential.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.